Hey everybody, and thank you very much for joining us for a 113th week of the Free Assange Vigil series. My name is Andrew Smith. With me tonight I have guest hosts Krish Mohan and Mark Lubbers with me. Misty did have some oral surgery, so she won't be with us this time, but she should be back with us Saturday. Um, Before we get into everything, so we do have a lot of wonderful guests with us tonight. I do want to run through the numbers. We have 3,913 days of illegal and arbitrary detention for Julian Assange. It's been 877 days, since the WikiLeaks founder was trafficked from the Ecuadorian embassy after being sold to the U.S. and U.K. for a $4.2 billion loan from the International Monetary Fund to the nation of Ecuador. It's been 231 days since District Judge Vanessa Baratzer denied Julian Assange bail after personally ordering his release and ruling no extradition in his case. It's been 1,461 days of inhumane pre-trial detention for the alleged Vault 7 whistleblower Joshua Schultz, and at least 1,027 days spent in special administrative measures. We have 876 days since the political persecution of Julian's friend Ola Binney started at the hands of the Ecuadorian government. We have oh my god, I can't read tonight. We have 81 days since Commander X was illegally taken out of Mexico and renditioned to the United States, and his next set of court dates is in early October. We have 31 days of detention served for Craig Murray for the crime of publishing in the United Kingdom. And in the charges, the British court specifically cites his publication of Julian Assange's court trial to show how and why he's such an impactful journalist. In good news, we have 84 days since whistleblower Reality Winner was moved to house arrest and is expected to be moved to parole on November 23rd. We have 529 days of freedom for Chelsea Manning, who's still streaming regularly to Twitch. And we have 179 days of freedom for Jeremy Hammond, even though he still has about 4.5 years of parole left. And just on time, we have Pasta joining us. But I will first kick it over to Mark to say, how are you doing today, buddy?
Hey, I'm okay. I'm just sharing it around a bit. For the rest, I'm fine. Actually, I went to a protest Saturday. It was actually a protest against vaccinating children in our country, right? Vaccinating children below 12. There's some debate about that stuff. We are not really dealing with the whole lockdown thing anymore, and not like forced masks or whatever, only in public transportation like buses and stuff. But there is some heavy debate about like, are we supposed to vaccinate children, right?
Well,
I went to an event for that, and it was actually pretty successful. Like considering it was in a town like 20 miles from here, and the town only has like 10,000 people, and there were like over 500 people showing up. So for that tiny little town, it was a lot of people, and it was actually a huge march. So I was very impressed with that. And like, I'm not going to say like on this vigil like to take like a side on that, but I think the debate is healthy. So.
I'm taking a side. They shouldn't be vaccinating fucking children. Sorry. I already asked Andrew beforehand if I can make comments about COVID. And Mark, it's ridiculous. It's 1 in a million chance that 11-year-old, 12-year-old, that 16-year-old will die of COVID. I mean, come on. This is just ridiculous. Sorry.
Well, our
Okay, if I'm
Ministry of
allowed,
Health in New Zealand has just decreed that 12-year-olds can make their own decision now. So parents are completely taken out of the equation. And when people started pointing to the Ministry of Health where it was stated on the website, suddenly they removed it. But I don't think they've removed the requirement or the rule. And my son turned 12 yesterday in the middle of a full-on New Zealand lockdown where we weren't even allowed to buy him a present because it was deemed non-essential. So we had to do the best with what we could get from the supermarket and, from online, orders. It's pretty shameful what we're doing to our children overall. Really, I mean, I've heard it described as, sacrificial child murder, and it's right. Even if it's just one person dies from being vaccinated when they didn't need to be, that is what it is. It's hard to really dress it up in any other way, isn't it?
Okay, just real quick, I agree with you, Pasta. Just saying, I wasn't going to do this on Assange Vigil, but if I can give my opinion, then anyway, yeah.
Freedom of speech,
disagree.
Marky. Freedom of speech. The perfect time is for an Assange visual, my friends.
I mean, it's really the thing that's making us all feel like we are all Assange, isn't it? I mean, we really are all being persecuted now on different levels, our children as well. It really brings that term home, doesn't it? We are all Assange. We're all Palestinians now, you know, in some sense.
Yeah. I mean, and it's up to us to be Assange, right? Like, you know, the other day I got up at 6:20 in the morning to live stream the advisory committee from the CDC. It was presented by Pfizer to listen to everything they have to say, because as the United States and the FDA goes, so goes the world's treatment on COVID, except for what you're experiencing there, of course, in New Zealand. But I mean, could you imagine if Assange was out and doing what he did best right now? Some of the inside information we would get on this whole thing. It's bad enough that everything they keep in plain sight is just horrifying, and they are really rubbing it in our face with the small print hidden on these little documents here and there. But just imagine the information that would be out there. Hopefully, I mean, I would think if Julian was out and about, we have a lot more information. But as it stands, when it comes to our children, this shouldn't even be a conversation. This was ridiculous. And let me tell you something. In that advisory committee, when they had opportunities for public speaking, there were very few that pushed back, and they had 3 minutes. But there were a lot. And unfortunately, well, I don't want to say unfortunately, it just would go without saying, a lot of these people who wanted to vaccinate our children, who wanted to make sure our children are masked up, are from California. Would you believe that?
Yeah, I mean, the other thing is WikiLeaks is so busy at the moment dealing with the persecution of Julian Assange that they're not really able to do what they are supposed to be doing. And I don't know if anyone's even leaking stuff to them due to what's going on to Assange. It's, you know, it all comes full circle, doesn't it? Is anyone going to leak when we know that doctors and epidemiologists and victims are being silenced right now? It's not a time where people are allowed to say anything that goes against the groupthink. That's just where we're at. And that's why it relates to Assange. It's always going to bring it back. I mean, you can bring back any topic and relate it to Assange. It's really easy, isn't it?
Yeah. And the fact that they are locking him up for just telling the truth, that's what's deterring probably people right now from leaking stuff as we speak on this crazy. This is the story of a century we're talking about over here, what we're all dealing with all collectively, you know, what side of the fence we stand on. I mean, it really is a shame, because I think a lot of people are deterred from passing that information forward, because as we know, all the war criminals are out and about, you know, like shit. Some of them are selling their paintings, while Julian, for telling the truth, is rotting in jail. And if you're wondering who's selling the painting, it's George W. Bush. They are just ridiculous paintings. But I mean, he's walking free and getting in touch with his inner soul, while Julian rots in a prison cell. And we're in the land of, like, you know, and that's the thing, they're accusing any dissenting voice as mis or disinformation, but yet they're deterring the real information from coming out and putting forth their narrative, and it's constantly changing.
Yeah, I was reminding people that if you're on the same side of the narrative as Tony Blair, proven like worst war criminal of all time, then it's time to reassess where your information is coming from that led you to believe this. You know, it's actually time to look at it in further detail. Yeah.
We got to get the hashtag going. Hashtag I stand with Blinken. Or we could just put it on everybody else. Hashtag you stand with Blinken.
Yeah. Has anyone seen this amazingly powerful video? I shared it on my Facebook, but I'm sure no one saw it. But there's a young girl. She's got her mouth taped up with black tape, and she's got a pile of paper in front of her. And she's a nurse's daughter in England, and she's holding up piece of paper after piece of paper, basically being her mum's voice and explaining why her mum isn't able to talk because of the threats that she's received if she dares speak outside of the WHO narrative, the CDC narrative, whatever you want to describe it. It's the same around the world. We're all suffering from it, for sure. But it's a really powerful way. I mean, I was tearing up by the time she was ending, because the way that she was being her mother's voice was just really moving. I think it really brings it home to some people, like that things are being silenced. I don't think people even really know that things are being silenced, because they're just merrily carrying on their normal ways, aren't they, watching what they watch.
Yeah. Well, I think it's also not the people, just the people who don't know what's going on because they're being silenced. I think the fact is that the thing that's scary to me is that we have a group of people that are actually cheering on the people who are doing the silencing, like they're actually being tribal and picking sides. And this, I know on this network over here, I could definitely speak. I know for Andrew, we talked about this in person that, once they started silencing people all the way back to Alex Jones, there was a group of people who were going, yeah, that's good. And these are the same people right now in COVID who was like, yeah, stop this disinformation, stop this misinformation. And they spoke this language through the advisory committee the other day. That's so scary. But once they start silencing people like Alex Jones, it's going to keep on going and keep on going, keep on going. And that's the scary part. Not even the people who don't get to hear the information that a lot of us are trying to get out, or the truth tellers are trying to get out. It's the fact that you have a group of people cheering it on. It feels like it's 1984 and they're in the crowd going, hey, hey, hey.
But do you think they're real, or do you think they're trolls? Because I think, some of it is real and some of it is G'd on by trolls, but a lot of it will be this MI6, Reuters, CIA funded think tanks and troll armies that we're dealing with. And yes, of course, it's causing people to go along with that because they think it's the right thing to do, go along with the government in these terrible times. But it may be that we're seeing that as much more like there's a lot of people on the other side when it's actually manufactured. Like, I would fully believe that it's partially being manufactured and that's what some people are going along with, but like at the moment in New Zealand, there's a guy called Mike Hoskins and he's been terrible on Assange. Like, I totally don't agree with him. But on the lockdowns and on the calling account, he's the only person in New Zealand media who's even questioning Jacinda. And so now there are calls today to remove him, just delete him, cancel culture him, and they just have no idea what they're losing. It's like throwing the baby out with the bathwater, they have no concept that along with people like him, there's also going to be the scientists and the epidemiologists and the victims and the doctors and the journalists and the whistleblowers. They just, don't compute that this is the same.
Yeah. Well, the manufacturing is like two parts, right? It is somewhat to show like a bigger pushback, a force than is actually there. And they have the funding to do that. Obviously, the side that's pushing back against us has unlimited amount of resources, money to actually, get that information out there. And that is the actual true disinformation. They're putting up a bigger front than there is, However, some of it is used to honestly give people a push. Those they can mentally co-opt to go along with their narrative. They use these trolls, they use these people to give them that push. And therefore we have a society of people. That's more scary than anything. I was watching some of the videos in Australia while people were in the streets protesting, but I did see a lot of people going out, like, counter protesting, going, you should be ashamed of yourself, with an Australian accent. I don't want to do it because I don't want to insult you at this moment, even though you're from New Zealand. But, you see a lot of those people out there. And what we're witnessing out here, and Andrew can attest to this too, this is something that, I'm so glad I'm here with my friend Andrew with that, because when we were around the early January era of Washington, D.C., remember, Andrew, like, you want to go around, you want to see the Proud Boys, we want to go see Antifa because we want to see the color revolution that's being pushed by the powers that may be. Well, they're doing the same thing right now. And we have counter protesters. A lot of us might have seen the footage, what happened in Portland the other day. You know what I'm saying? It's ridiculous. And to me, it's the saddest thing to see people turn on each other. And that's what they're doing. And this COVID situation, whatever you believe, I believe it was a pandemic, right, is their check move. And if we don't do something, we the people, to get it straight, it's going to be checkmate. And that's my honest belief. I have never seen people divided so much. And they've got it to a point where they have a dichotomy of sorts, or it's a true dichotomy, not really necessarily a false dichotomy, where they're saying what you do will affect my health. And if you put people in a scenario like that, they'll just turn on each other like never before.
Oh, yeah. And hi, everybody, by the way. And to back up on that, Pasta.
Love you, Magnus.
Love you, too. It does seem awful convenient that they waited till the moment where there's a manufactured reason to tell everyone not to go outside, to do a bunch of awful shit that usually would get people in the streets over it. Just saying. That's the struggle we've been having with
giving away $21 trillion and printing half of all money in 18 months.
Yeah, I mean, everything in Palestine, everything in Afghanistan, everything with, in the Afghanistan talks, we were forgetting that just in this last stimulus package, we gave them like $200 million for gender study programs or something like that. That was an awful gamble, seeming how that turned out. There's a whole bunch of reasons people should be livid and in the streets and up in arms, but there's this little convenient detail that's causing everybody to want to stay inside and not go outside. So
I was waiting to see if someone would say something. But no,
I refuse to speak again. I've been speaking too much. I'm like, Andrew, say something. Karen, say something. Emma, I love your picture. Say something.
I have way too good of a memory. That's the same dress you were wearing when you went and shot guns with Ford.
No, it's not. I was wearing a totally different dress. What are you talking about?
I have great.
Yes, it is the same dress. You're right.
Me and Andrew were supposed to be on a show today to promote End the Damn Wars, but it was.
I noticed what happened.
It was canceled because, what Pasta was talking about, division and tribalism.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You know, it really sucks the way they're trying to silence a lot of people. I mean, you know, making decisions, getting silenced and monetized by YouTube and stuff. It's just blatantly trying to suppress the voice of the people out there. That's what they're trying to do. And I know that everybody's this argument that they're a private company and stuff, but it is kind of crazy what they're doing, because once they were able to do it on a smaller level, they're able to do it on a bigger level. And now some of the way they're silencing some of these doctors, you know what I'm saying? It's crazy.
Yeah, the doctor thing's spooky. You and Fee's segment on that guy that should be like, the statue should be built to this fucking man's honor for what he did. I'm gonna butcher his Zelenko. Statue should be built to his honor, and instead he's not allowed to fucking communicate on the internet. It's like, that's where we're at.
We were taking that video off BitChute, right? You know, we were taking that money. We would literally, because why? He can't be on YouTube. I don't even think he has a profile anymore on Twitter. You know, and that's the whole thing.
I don't know if you heard from New Zealand, but
I'm sorry.
Just disconnected.
Oh yeah, I think we lost Alex.
She started talking and her bar went red.
Yep.
New Zealand government was like, no,
whatever
you're about to say, stop.
No more.
Oh boy.
You all went dead.
You're the one who went dead. We're good.
The camera's still out on us, Alex.
I see you guys.
Oh boy.
We're gonna call you Candles.
Oh, you call me
You're back.
Candles. Yes, I'm sorry. Was I talking away and it went? I was just saying how people got arrested here. The main organisers of the lockdown anti-mandate protest got arrested on the first day of the lockdown in New Zealand, and the lockdown went on for about a week. And they had a whole bunch of protesters yesterday. They arrested 19 people around the country. And in Australia, where they had the truckies protest, they arrested Karen Brewer, who was the main organizer of that. I don't know how many other arrests have been going on, but it's been pretty tragic.
I know there was that very high-profile arrest where they grabbed that one guy who organized the first big
Billy
Australian.
TK.
Yeah, and he got 8 years in prison for going outside, people. 8 years in prison.
No, he didn't. I think he got 3 days in jail. There's still a hearing, so it could, the charges could be worse.
Sorry. I'm mixing
but worse was that they sent him home and banned him from the internet altogether. He's not allowed to access the internet full stop now.
No, sorry, I'm mixing up. Not 8 years. The first article will say they're trying to charge him with up to 8 months. I mixed up my months or years.
Something like that. But I mean, he's actually one of the leaders of the political party that Jacinda deleted 3 days before the election on Facebook and Google. 3 days before the election, the other party was looking really much more powerful than online anyway than Labor, our main left party here. And I think they got nervous and they deleted him from the internet then as well. So he's had constant problems with that. And he's actually literally the leader of a political party here. Even though it's a small one, it's like a third party or fourth.
Yeah, and I mean, that's why I'm always glad you have people like Pasta running around talking about election integrity. And Rome pointed this out too, and before he was also deleted off of Twitter forever. Of everybody talks about all the screwy things that happened around the 2020 elections, but one thing that does not get talked about is how the Green Party and the Libertarian Party were effectively purged from Twitter and Facebook a month before the election. I think I think it was a grand total of 60% of the LP official accounts, including like official run by the Libertarian Party, like groups and chats and stuff like that, were banned off of Facebook with no warning and no explanation. And the Green Party got a lot of similar things. A lot of Green Party like meme pages and networks and stuff like that were just deleted off the internet with no explanation just a month before the election.
Well, they also had Howie, didn't they? They had Howie Hawkins.
Yeah.
Well, you don't want to ban him because he
what
makes
Facebook
the.
did. In 2018, Facebook released new verification methods. That's when the like show your ID and all that stuff came out in a large scale. And what they did was they put up a block on political advertising. You could advertise any other thing you wanted, but if there was certain keywords, they flagged it as political ads and would limit your ability to post it if you and anyone else in your back-end tool suite weren't verified through Facebook. So what ended up happening is anyone, any person, political person or not, whether they were running for office or just had a page advertising opinion, literally had to stop everything they were doing. And for a small campaign, it takes a lot of time and money to do things like this. And for us, I was running a multimedia marketing company back then, and it was literally 40 hours worth of work over 2 days to get all of our verifications for everyone and all that put through. And it literally, in the last 4 months of the 2018 midterm, they just turned off political advertising, essentially, even for like blue check Facebook and the accounts that they would show like this person's running for this office. Most of those people wouldn't be able to advertise unless they literally had like a big money suite behind them doing their marketing that had everyone verified. Because if they had like one administrator that was just some random Joe Schmo in their account or some random campaign worker, that person had to submit their ID and get a PIN number mailed to them and all this stuff just to run an ad. It was crazy.
Yeah, they always do this stuff last minute. It's absurd. And again, yeah, private company, my ass at this point. Like anyone who wants to make that argument, that ship has so sailed, and I get so annoyed when people still bring it up.
They still say it.
I mean, yeah, somebody just the other day, I got in an argument with them after Jen Psaki's like, we're directly working with Facebook and like whatever, I don't know if it was the ADL or someone else, and the FBI to target extremists and get them removed off the internet. It's like, yeah, private company, guys.
No, but the government used it to communicate to the people, right? They use Facebook and Twitter like to do their official communications, and when they like kick you off a platform like that, you're no longer able to contact them like other people can.
Yeah, that famous lawsuit where they made it illegal for Trump to block people, yet Twitter can block Trump? ?
Yeah.
It was like,
Yeah.
Yeah, I was surprised by that too. I didn't even think it was possible, to be honest.
and
He was the
and
president like of the USA, and then a USA company like completely kicks him out. I didn't know it was possible.
and it's particularly funny because everybody keeps pointing out that the Taliban can have a Twitter, but Donald Trump can't. To where I got attacked by the Taliban today on Twitter. I had a really large Taliban account start making memes about me. So
No,
it was funny.
really? That is awesome. Sounds like a punk rock band. I got attacked by the Taliban.
Right. It's a surreal world we live in right now. I don't really know how to do.
That's awesome. Congratulations, man.
But it's true. They can actually have Twitter accounts. That's fucked up.
Yeah, no, there's like 3 huge pages on Twitter that are like they do like live streams every day, just walking around Kabul, and they're like the dedicated like meme propaganda department for the Taliban. And of course, like a tons of like genuine anti-Semitic shit and homophobia and everything because it's the Taliban. So like, but they don't get banned, of course not.
That's
Dude,
why
I
I
remember
hate
when. Sorry, go ahead. No, Emma's speaking. Go ahead.
I just hate when people are celebrating when stuff like that happens, when Trump or whoever gets banned or censored or whatever, because they have their idea about why that was important and why they think it was good and whatever. They can think whatever they want, but at the same time, there's all this other stuff is allowed to be on it. Especially like YouTube does a horrible job of censoring like really bad things that shouldn't be on there.
Yeah, there's like explicit child pornography and shit.
And they just like let that be there. And they might say that they don't, but it's there. And then they'll like censor half all of us from saying important things that are real and not like
Yeah,
bad.
that one super prominent vaccine questionnaire. I don't know what label we're gonna run with, but the big account that was laying out all the details about the vax and everything that got banned just for pointing out that the booster shots are gonna have to be used forever because the vaccine has a half-life. And they deleted his 200,000 follower Twitter account for pointing out details directly from the fucking CDC.
Yes. We've some of the pages that I've worked on, we've screenshotted the CDC's website and then Facebook fact checked it, and this is a screenshot from the CDC. They say something different now. But
if you scroll through Thomas Massey's Twitter line, right, Republican House Representative Thomas Massey, literally they remove your ability to like or comment or retweet without adding a comment to it. And then the only thing it says is, this is extreme misinformation and some shit like that. And you're like, if you put that on there, that just means that you don't want me to know that. You can't do that. That. It's when they put this tweet contains hacked information, and people just put it on absolutely everything.
Yeah. So people are thinking, because they're not paying attention to anything, that these outlets and big tech are caring and doing something good, and meanwhile they're letting all this other crap be there that kids can stumble on, that are actually bad stuff. And I hate that it's happening to us, that an actual president can get kicked off, and people don't realize.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's particularly absurd in the gun community because they have this whole new thing where if there's a firearm in a live stream, they can delete your entire channel.
Yes.
But I can literally pull up live streams from Kabul right now of the Taliban just shit posting live on YouTube, and it doesn't get taken down, shooting guns and having tanks and shit in the background. It's what is going on?
Yeah, they're doing what they're doing on purpose, and there's an agenda behind it, and most people don't realize that it's not for the good of everyone that they're censoring certain things. It's going back to them being private companies. They're doing almost all of this at the behest of our government or government organizations or other they're not private.
And people always people back of because my whole line from the mutualist thing is, if you take money from the government or work with the government, you're no longer a private company. And people jump to the absurd example of so if I get a loan from the government, is my business no longer a private company? And it's stop being so binary.
That's literally how it works, right? It's called. I'm in a small business. I'm not the owner, operator, manager, decision maker, or anything. But I read the PPP loan documents from when that got filed, and it literally tells you what you can and can't do in the conduct of your business. I could probably grab it off the shelf and show you where it literally says your business cannot engage in political activities if you receive money from the federal government. They tell you cannot do that, or you will owe us that money, and it's only yours if you play by these rules. So to that person that's I'm receiving a loan for yes, you are an operating state entity at that point if you are receiving a loan from the federal government to continue your existence.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And
go ahead.
There's fine print like that too with an organization that I'm on the board of. We can't do anything that comes across as endorsing or supporting or working with somebody that's running for office, or endorse certain kinds of protests if they happen to get violent, because we could lose our credentials as the kind of organization that we are. There's always this fine print tacked on that ends up meaning you are actually what you're claiming you aren't by being this. You have to read the fine print, but nobody does.
Right. And on similar but parallel track, the Department of Human Services in a bunch of different states are starting to send out a bunch of letters to people saying that their unemployment that they got is no longer valid, or it was gotten through fraud, or their COVID claims aren't valid. They want their money back, people. Nothing is free. The government gives nothing away without expecting
Don't
something
scare
returned.
me, Magnus, please, man. I'm frightened that they'll just.
I got 4 letters over there saying I owe $2,500 and I have to call the Department of Human Services within 3 days, or they're going to take action.
My mom in Ohio got one of those too. She was a teacher that went on unemployment, and they said, "Oh, you didn't actually qualify. We shouldn't have given it to you. We just didn't have the ability to process everyone's paperwork."
Yep. So
My
they're
mom-
going back and hitting everybody up for that money back. So
Yeah. Which is like not a new thing. My mom has struggled with trying to get on disability. She has a whole host of things that have been wrong and impacted her ability to work throughout like the bulk of her life. And as she's gotten older, it's gotten worse. And she was on disability, and then for years, and something happened along the process, and they were like, wait, never mind, we don't think we should have given it to you. You owe us all of the disability that we've ever given you. You need to give it back to us.
Yep.
So
And
it's a thing that they do a lot.
PPP loans. If they start calling in some of these PPP loans, these huge loans on these small businesses, they're going to fold if they even survive.
If they're still, yes,
Yeah,
if
that's
they
the thing.
still exist.
If they even exist in the first
The
place.
few people that made it through are going to get destroyed, which is probably like a good thing that I didn't even get one of those, and my business just went under early, so I didn't have the false hope.
Exactly.
But
congratulations, you've been denied.
Right.
In a good way.
Yeah.
But that's the thing too, and it's kind of like around the like eviction moratorium and stuff like that. I get into a lot of people on the right because like there was people that lied to get unemployment. Yes, there was people that lied to get the PPP loan. Sure. There's also a whole bunch of people that needed it really bad that entire time and never got it. You know, like I know people that are still waiting for the unemployment they filed a year and a half ago, people that never got the PPP loan, people that never got, like dozens of people that never got any of the stimulus checks or anything. And then they're going to turn around and be like, oh, by the way, you owe all that rent now, or you're going to get evicted. Because I think that's the other thing a lot of people forget is it's not that they're asking you to start paying your rent now. Like, oh, we've been fine for a year. Now you're going to start paying your rent. No, it's we expect you to pay all the rent you missed now, or you're getting evicted. And it's
all at once.
Yeah. And people just like so much nuance is lost in everything now. And I kind of just constantly feel like I'm slapping people to the right and left of me simultaneously and being like, no, pay attention to what the hell is actually going on. Like,
well, hopefully we can slap them to get in the streets together. I mean, that's why they're trying to keep us apart so much, is because this system is collapsing on them. And God forbid, we can get people on both sides of the fence to get together. And guys like us, guys and girls like us, been hanging out here like, where the hell you been? This is what we've been talking about. Let's go.
Right. I know. I had a whole AMA or whatever that I was involved with in just like 15, 20 minutes ago. And people are like, what should we do? And I'm like, we're like 5 years late. Like we should have had like mass street protests 5 years ago. We should already be at civil disobedience. We're not even outside yet. Like we're so far behind. And the COVID stuff's only made a lot of these problems worse.
A lot of the people in New Zealand who are on social benefits or getting some kind of welfare or disability, they were the ones that were first approached to get the vaccine. And there is now movements now that there looks like there's going to be some kind of linking of social housing, places where they've accommodated a family because they're working somewhere, or all the sort of welfare operations seem to be looking like they're going to start to get tied to whether or not you're taking the vaccine. And I think it's really scaring some of the lower income people here, but equally other people losing their jobs and all that sort of stuff as well. But I can see that coming. It really looks like it here. All the hints are there. There's even a talk of one area in Auckland. They're already going to go through and start saying, oh, you haven't taken your vaccine. Why are you getting welfare? And it's very frightening. And I mean, even just 1 year ago, I would have been 100% for universal basic income. I would have been like screaming for it. And that's even knowing that I'm a dissenter and someone that maybe the government wouldn't like. But now I can see how frightening that is and how poor it is for our self-sufficiency. And that's the other thing that gets me is all this fake green mask that they wear when they're doing all this stuff. In that, we're pushing towards a globalist kind of idea of what's green rather than a self-sufficiency local idea of what's green as well at the same time. And the two seem to be merging together now. The two, the biosecurity state and the sort of green, what might be ending up to be called climate lockdowns and Agenda 2030 coming through. It's really frightening, and I never would have been into this idea even a year ago. It frightens me how much I've changed.
Yeah, you're
Really.
starting to see the infamous case that hit all over the news of they're starting to take people's kids away from them for not being
Right.
vaccinated, which is
Yep.
like
I think that might be just fear to get more people to get vaccinated, though. I think they might be throwing some of those stories out just to get more vaccinations. You know,
even then, if like that's almost just as bad as
Yeah.
if they're
It's
actually
evil.
taking
It's
people's
still
kids away.
evil.
It's evil.
yeah,
Yes.
right.
We got the
And-
11-year-old kid here in Chicago that literally they said the mother can't get fucking custody because dad's gonna
Yep.
get it because dad is vaccinated, mom is not.
Yep. Which wasn't
I
the
know
reason
people in
that they were
Australia-
talking to a judge. That wasn't
Yeah, I
even
know people in
what was being
Australia
addressed.
frightened of this as well, and feel their family. And I mean, it's part of the division that's been caused by this, by two people in the family having different ideas as well, potentially. The untold damage it does to relationships everywhere. It's really, really obvious.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Looking at the way that people were responding to that story about that kid in Chicago, like the people that I saw talking about it on Twitter primarily were supportive of it, which was horrifying to see. But the things that they were saying was they were calling that mom abusive, that she like it must be an abusive situation. And like, do you understand the trauma for the child and the rest of the family for changing unexpectedly their parenting situation and custody? Like, talk about abuse.
These people don't
that
give a
mom
shit.
no, and that mom specifically said she had reason, like she had previous reactions to
Medical
vaccines, which is
reasons,
why.
yeah.
But that doesn't even matter. Like it should be your choice anyways.
I mean, the case wasn't even about custody, was it?
No,
the case
it
was
wasn't.
about
Yep, it was just the judge was just like, "Hey, are you vaccinated?"
There's
and
no
then
way that
decided-
would get through an
yeah.
appeal. I mean, no, surely they can't get that through. I think that's why it makes me believe it's really just a fair story.
I mean,
But
it is Illinois though. Like they're a hell state. They're upside down and backwards, unfortunately. So we'll see.
And even then, it's like been traumatic for all of them already. Like
Illinois
even
is
if it
a-
gets reversed, it's
Illinois is the Florida of the Midwest. Sorry, go ahead. Had to throw that in there, Emma. Sorry. Context of the story. And yeah, the fact they are using language like it's abusive. Wow. It seems these people. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Andrew.
I was just going to say, I think that kind of language is in response to people calling masks abusive. Like, whenever I see a little kid running through the park with a mask on, I ask my daughters, like, okay, why aren't you wearing a mask? And they say, because it's really bad for my lungs. So, like, to me, parents that force their children into masks at a young age when they have developing bodies to rebreathe their own carbon dioxide for 8 to 10 hours a day is absolute abuse compared to someone that's like, hey, I don't want to sterilize my kid.
Yeah, but the synthetic left, to them, everything is fucking abusive, right? Okay? Language is abusive to them, right? So, I mean, they've been doing it for a long time. There's only been a few of us who've been saying, that mask is abusive. It's abusive to humanity, right? It completely dehumanizes us, even too. You talk about the psychological effects that nobody's even talking about right now that we'll be talking about for years to come with the whole mask wasn't necessary or not. So, yeah, I mean, to me, though, that language is definitely coming from those at top to put it down to their little minions, to put it out there, their little cheerleaders, to get that type of language out there, to control the narrative, and also to bully people into getting these experimental vaccines.
Hey, and in our country, psychologists have complained that they are now teaching kids that they can no longer, these young kids, right, like 5, 6 years old, that they can no longer sing in schools. They can no longer hug each other. They are no longer allowed to laugh because it can spread the virus, right? And this happens at such a young age that these kids are going to be damaged for life.
Yeah.
They're already saying it's having an effect on IQ, aren't they?
Yes.
In young kids, because I mean, a whole part of their understanding of reality is seeing people's expressions and their body language, and that's just being completely damaged by this. And the effects of that will be generations to come.
We're gonna have a generation of
getting
psychopaths.
Yeah, I mean, like I'm
no emotions.
I'm like a psychotic, like anti-school, like activist, like abolish public school kind of guy. So I harp on a lot of the kind of statism and worship of authority that's beaten to kids in public school in general. And then you're seeing crazy stories of like them getting thrown in a room because they wouldn't put their mask over their nose, or getting screamed at, or like the creepy zombie walks they're having them do now, where they stick their arms out in front of each other and waddle to make sure they're 6 feet apart. Like, God, like but you're seeing rebellion too, so it's always kind of a back and forth. But I think that's going to cause even further divisions down the line. If you're going to have the kids that happily went along with that are going to be more state indoctrinated than ever, and then the rebellious kids that are going to end up like a bunch of me's. So it's like, we're going to see how the hell turns out.
It's in the coursework as well, though. I caught we've been doing homeschooling, obviously, because we were in the hardest lockdown. And I saw a poem that my son was being asked to respond to, and it was all about the grumblers. It had no author, no context of where this came from, but the whole poem, which they were supposed to analyze, was all about, don't be that family that complains. Don't be those horrible, grumbly people who are always looking at the negative side of life. Be the family that doesn't complain. You wouldn't want to be like that. And even they don't want to even admit that they're like that. And it was like an entire poem all about how to just shut up and agree with what you're told. And I was like, no, this is really not cool. So, and he was asked to add a phrase to it. And my daughter and I were like helping him come up with an antithesis of the whole poem in the answer, i.e., the only reason we get political change is because people grumble and complain. So don't knock the grumblers.
Just have the very last line be like, everything above this is bollocks.
Yeah, right. That was kind of what I was suggesting, and Ollie didn't want to do that. But in the end, I think my daughter helped him write something that was just as good. So we gave them an answer to that one. But I think it's coming through more areas than you'd even realize in terms of the conditioning that they're going through. My daughter in high school, she does another project class, which is it's replaced the homeroom, which was where they got to meet up with their group, and half of their homeroom is replaced with a thing called project. No one knows what they're supposed to be doing. It seems like the entire class is gaslit. First of all, they're allowed to work with anyone they want on anything they want, and then the teacher goes, oh no, that doesn't fit in my box, change it, do it again. And it's sort of like a terrorizing. And then eventually when you've finished working with that group, then they go, oh, I think you should work with these people that you don't like. And so then they're put into, and it's like, people have been brought to tears in this class. It's meant to be letting them do the project of their choice, and it's not that at all. It seems more like a class in gaslighting.
Yeah,
professional.
You had that whole kind of campaign that was building up to this of like film teachers and like actually see what your kids are being taught and everything like that. And that just got utterly shut down because tons of schools are not allowing the parents to step foot anywhere on the property or go inside at any point or see what's going on. And like, there's been instances even in Michigan, I think it hit local news. I didn't sure if it got any bigger than that, but a mother tried to pick up her son from a middle school. It was essentially like a disciplinary thing. I don't know, who's throwing a tantrum or something like that. And they would not allow him to leave school grounds until school was over. And she was not allowed to come inside and get him. So essentially she just had, I think it was like for 4 hours, this kid was alone in a room and his parents could not come inside to get him. And they ended up getting like the police called and everything. It was like, what the hell? And like, thank God that everyone that I care about that's still in school is homeschooled, because I would lose my mind and I would end up on bigger than local news in a situation like that. If you're literally physically detaining children and not allowing their parents to see them over nothing.
I mean, it was once the case that if you went to a state school, you'd expect that you wouldn't be religiously indoctrinated, that you wouldn't be expected to hold one position versus another in politics. In terms of a whole bunch of arenas of topics, you wouldn't be divided and told this is the right thing to think. And that seems to be common now. It's just that kids are politically lobbied in their own schools or even by companies. Like when it went to digital here in New Zealand, we were told we could only have iPads. And I mean, half the mothers probably couldn't afford that, but they wouldn't want to disadvantage their children. And then, but of course they couldn't run the software on anything else at first. So therefore that was the only way that you could. And then we found out that the next school, they wanted Chromebooks. And then we found out that the next school, they wanted something else. And so each thing became a kind of almost marketing opportunity to the kids as well. So yeah, there seems to be a lot of indoctrination going on.
Yeah, your state sponsor, your state school sponsored by Coca-Cola kind of shit happening. And I mean, obviously, I don't know how it is over there, but it's always been bad here with like the military and shit, and having recruiters in classrooms and stuff like that, trying to get people to join the military. And now you have the U.S. military and these recruiters in some of these classrooms across the country pushing vaccine stuff and lockdown stuff with help with the staff and faculty. Because you had that whole thing of in Dallas where the military was I don't know if it was Dallas, somewhere in Texas. We had the military walking up and down the main strip in town, going into bars and giving free vaccines to people. And it's like, this is gross. Which, by the way, the fact that like giving people that are inebriated a medical procedure in the middle of the street without consulting their doctor first didn't cause like riots is beyond me. Like, are you fucking kidding me?
Like in a not sterile, clean environment, in a way that you can't verify their medical history. What if they were already vaccinated? Like you don't know anything about
like blackout drunk Emma sitting outside of a Hooters. Let me stick this needle in your arm. Like, in what universe do we live in? And the fact that they explicitly said they wanted to do it because people would be inebriated and their friends would peer pressure them into doing it. They publicly said they do that. Like, what the fuck?
And people are like, "Oh, great, good."
Because of that idiot Trump too good. We'll have the military do it. Like, fuck you.
If anyone comes up to my house in fucking fatigues with a needle, it's not going to go the way they want it to go. I'm sorry. Like, that's not Okay, I've watched too many sci-fi movies for that shit to ever fly. Are you kidding me?
I walked to the chemist in lockdown. We were allowed to go as long as we only go out to a shop one at a time, and we go to the supermarket or the chemist. Then we're in only the big supermarkets we're allowed to. So I went and queued up at the chemist, waiting to get in, and she actually asked me, "Do you have a vaccination to get into the chemist?" And I was like, I actually thought she was asking me because it was a requirement for a minute there. I was like, what? And so I said, no, I'd rather gnaw my own leg off, frankly. And so it turned out she was desperately trying to fill up appointments in the vaccination table, which had taken over half of the chemist. And so she was hoping that I might fill a last minute slot. And so I just went and sort of red pilled her and said, absolutely not. Are you aware of the research? Are you aware of the other side of the story? I don't think perhaps you're getting that. And I gave her a website address to go and look at of New Zealand doctors who were speaking out. But I was horrified. I said, you don't ask someone private medical information to enter a chemist. Like, why on earth would I tell you what my private medical information is? It flabbergasted me.
Yeah, the culture, how that spread through the culture, that it's suddenly okay to ask complete strangers medical questions.
Yep.
Like I've literally had a cashier at Myers, which is essentially like a Walmart ripoff in the Midwest, like straight up ask me, like, "Are you vaccinated? What vaccine did you get?" And I'm like, hello, like, are you on menopause? Like, what? No, you want me to ask you? You're not comfortable with me asking you this question on any other subject. Why are you asking me this? Total stranger, never interacted with them in my life, and it's like, what the hell?
Yeah,
well, you got to know if you're on Team Moderna or Team Pfizer.
Yeah, who's going to own your DNA?
I'm drawing a direct line between the Harry Potter fandom and the team vaccine stuff, and you can't change my mind.
Have you seen that? I've seen a couple of artists like made little. Did you see those little graphics for like each vaccine they fit those like the Harry Potter houses?
There was some Tumblr artist that made like anthropomorphized like sexy versions of the vaccine brands, and I was like,
God.
And it's like, call Jesus, start the rapture. Like, what the hell is
I hate when you see with these assholes like, what's his name, Dax Shepard, wearing a Team Fauci t-shirt. Like, oh my god, are you fucking kidding me?
At least those things blow up in their face. Like Andrew, the Cuomo sexual thing was like the fastest zero to like exploding in their face thing I've ever seen in my life. So at least we can be sure that that'll happen eventually.
We got a lot of jokes around this house, Magnus, nowadays. Hey, you're not a pervert, you're Italian. Hey.
I was gonna say, me and Pasta
that with a straight face.
Me and Pasta gonna have deep, long, multi-layered jokes about that because that's the first thing I saw. Is like, God, I want to call my aunt right now. She's probably losing her mind because she's like mega Italian. She's probably so pissed,
so mad. Son of a
I hate that they
bitch.
totally missed the 15,000 like elderly that were killed off
I know.
by Cuomo. But we're all going to talk about his Italian gestures.
But I
You know,
think
like,
that's why that happened.
Yeah, right. True.
But
true.
I'm even more mad about this. And Emma, you can empathize with this. The fact that like under all the Cuomo thing, even the people very critical of Cuomo, and for the right reasons, are just forgetting that Whitmer did the same thing. Like she's under no heat.
Yes.
Nobody's talking about her. Nobody's screaming about her on Fox News. She's just calmly in the corner, did the same thing, just as bad, just as much fucking casualties, and nobody, like, she's just chill.
Well, the FBI tried to assassinate her, so you can't talk about
it.
That is a point.
Oh boy.
Yeah. What'd you your crew
But
was
one of
so
the
sloppy
other-
there, Magnus.
Right.
One of the other
Jesus.
horrifying things about
They
the
weren't
lockdowns
Italian.
and the way society's being conditioned is the prison system, right? And this is something that Julian's case highlights most explicitly. And it's like, for those of you who don't know what actually happened to Julian last winter, which is something we're quickly approaching now, they moved all of the COVID positive patients, I think it was 64 of them, to his wing of the prison, and then turned the heat off to that whole wing, saying that if they were to heat it, then the moving air would cause coronavirus to spread within the prison, right? So you had a publisher in basically downtown London in their Guantanamo Bay with no heat in a room, in a wing full of medically sick, dying people, right? While at the same time they didn't give him his winter clothes and he had to insulate his windows with books. Literally had to take the literature he had and use it to block the wind coming in. And he wasn't able to meet with his lawyers for 6 months leading up to his trial, from the time of the end of the trial in March to the beginning of the trial in September. Didn't even get to read the legal documents that the U.S. had released about him in prison. And that's something that's not unique to Julian's situation. I have friends very, very near and dear to me that had a loved one in detention. And literally the only way you were allowed to talk to them is through video cam. Like, they could pay $20 to talk with you for 5 minutes over a live chat if there was room for them to sit down at the camera screen. Not even getting to have your loved one go to the prison to talk to you over camera or sit through a 1/4 inch thick or 2 inch thick bulletproof glass. At this point, it's literally like you're just emailing back and forth with your loved one or streaming with them, not actually able to see them or interact with them. And those conversations are all heavily monitored, probably all recorded, all scrutinized. So it's just, that to me is absolutely terrifying.
Yeah, it makes me so mad I can't even comment. Just like the prison system in general has been so horrible, and this has just given them an excuse to do like whatever the hell they want. And particularly just torture people like you mentioned, the amount of they've used solitary confinement now as an excuse for COVID when it happens to conveniently only be against people they don't like. Like they're not putting general population all in their little cells or whatever. It's just whoever they hate at the time. Oh, we need to, Commander X, great example. Oh, we need to lock him up alone, solitary confinement for 20 hours a day and no visitors because of COVID. Like, sure. And they did that same thing to my friend Philip Archibald. He was held for a year, no trial, no bail, in solitary over nothing. They did the same thing to my friend John Felinski. He was held for 8 months, no trial, no bail, and was in solitary because COVID the entire time. So like it's being used as a weapon against political prisoners essentially, and giving them cover. And it's so nonsense.
I think prisoners have been threatened without being able to have visitors either unless they get vaccinated. And that's been one thing I heard. I haven't followed it up, but it's definitely frightening. And given that they can earn so much money from each prisoner, and the, big companies, mega companies like Circa and Kamala Harris, all profited out of basically putting people in jail. And the better if they're minority class, it just and in America they don't get the vote in jail, do they?
Nope, felons don't get the vote.
It's really weird. In New Zealand, you'd get the vote if you're in prison. You even get the vote if you just arrived and you're a resident and you've got the right to work, you've got the vote instantly, which is really strange.
In fact, in some states, they got to fight for the right after they've served their prison time to get the right back to vote. In fact, Florida just went through that whole.
And then even when a state like Florida wins that right for felons, the legislature or the governor simply overturns it for money. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's weird. In here, that never influenced the right to vote. You can always just vote if you're in prison or whatever.
Well, we have the most free and fair elections in the world, right, Pasta?
Absolutely. It was the most secure of all times.
Yeah, well, technically, it's not part of your punishment, right? It's not part of your punishment that you lose the right to vote. Like, it's not listed as your punishment.
You lose so much here when it comes to the prison system. I did a whole little report about the child services, to where it's a 3 to 6 month essentially ticking clock if you go into custody to lose control over your kids and lose access to your kids. So even if you get held in jail for 4 months and then you go to trial and you're proven completely innocent, you were in jail for 3 months, you lost all custody to your kids, and now we're sending them to a foster center, and you have to go through the whole process to get them back. And that happens before COVID. So God knows how it's going now, where, people's their excuse for holding my buddy Phil for a year was because they were swamped and dealing with COVID restrictions or whatever, and that's why they couldn't give him an actual trial. And if he would have had kids, then he would have lost custody to his kids. So it's like, and then obviously my friend John, who they held for 8 months, they released him on no charges. So he essentially sat in jail for 8 months for no crime. And if he would have had a kid, he would have lost custody to his child. So it's like, and all of that was done under the excuse of COVID.
So
in New Zealand, there's even a law, and in Britain, there's a law which says that you can actually just be put in a mental asylum just for having a political opinion. And that's Tony Blair. That's a Tony Blair special, that one, which Jacinda, having worked for Tony Blair here in New Zealand, she seems to have adopted here. And I know of at least one person that's happened to. Just purely political opinion, not to do with. And the worrying thing about that here is New Zealand is probably the worst in the world for your kind of MK Ultra and experimenting on people in asylums with psychotropic drugs and horrible cocktails of them. New Zealand has to have one of the worst records actually for being ridiculous to people who've ended up in asylum. One of the Assange activists for the Wellington lot, he's had that happen to him, and he was threatened that he couldn't get his kids back unless he accepted 6 psychotropic drugs, and he didn't want to, so he lost access to his child for 2 decades. That's really sad. Or just on the basis that he would refuse to take those drugs anymore after leaving, not being sectioned or under the Mental Health Act anymore. I don't know how they could possibly rule that, but they seem to be able to.
Yeah, it seems that the modern government across all Western countries is very committed to finding any excuse to take people's kids away from them. That was things that even people like Alex Jones and shit was raving about 8 years ago, of like, oh, you let your 7-year-old child play at the playground like a block away from your house, like Child Protective Services are going to come in and censor you. And like, again, that's why I said like we should have been in the street 5 years ago, because every single issue we're talking about here that's awful under COVID existed before, and now COVID is like supercharging it and making it even more of a problem. So
Chris actually,
pre-COVID there were 55 cities.
What was that, Andrew?
No, I was just going to say, Chris actually wrote a good piece on mental health to kind of tie all of this in together. And I'll let him intro it because he'll do a way better job than me. But basically, it ties how mental health and basically the state of trauma that they've put us all in is now literally an accepted defense across the world and in international courts. So I don't know if you want to intro that, Chris, or what.
Yeah, I just thought it was kind of really interesting to see, but basically Assange's mental health, which I think is, it's interesting because they were like, this really depressed person, if you put him in an American prison, might kill himself. So we're not going to let you extradite him to that, but we are going to go ahead and put him back into the British Supermax prison again. And it's just like, oh, did you not hear the words you just said a minute ago? That's fine, I guess. but the other thing too was it was the same thing with Daniel Hale. Daniel Hale talked about the trauma that he has been through by being a combat veteran and a drone operator, and all of that was actually taken into account for his sentencing. And I mean, I think we're all mad that he got sentenced at all for revealing war crimes that we should all be pissed off about. But you know, they were pushing for what, 9 years at the I can't remember the dude's name, but he was pushing for like 9 years for Daniel Hale, and he wound up with 45 months, which Kevin Gasola also pointed out will probably be like significantly less because of the measures that they've like the protective measures that they've kind of put into place, which again is like that's normally not a thing that we get to see. So I just think it's kind of interesting that, you know, in these overarching cases against people that the state hates this much, like Vanessa Barrister does not like Julian Assange, and I know she's reversed that decision since, because she's going to let the U.S. try to extradite him again, even though they have zero fucking case against him. It's still like, to me, a good step forward to say, cool, like we're actually considering people like Julian Assange, whistleblowers that the state doesn't like, as fucking human beings, and saying, yeah, he's going through torture, and if you put him in this worst place, like he will kill himself, and that is not okay. You know, so because they could, I think we probably talked about this a couple different times, is like they could have taken him out, but all that would have done was martyrdom, and instead of make him an example of, you know, don't reveal war crimes, don't reveal corporate fraud, don't tell people what the truth actually is. So I think it's really interesting that mental health has been at the focal point of all this. And the other part of the piece is, obviously I'm talking to Americans who probably don't know, like sort of like a mainstream audience don't know who Julian Assange or Daniel Hale is, because they're not really paying attention to that sort of stuff, but they are paying attention to the Olympics. And we saw 2 instances there with Sha'Carri Richardson and Simone Biles, where the main focal point of the story was mental health and dealing with trauma, you know, because Sha'Carri Richardson used THC to cope with her mom's death. And then you kind of saw like what the capitalist system actually does with its hyper competitive mindset is it burns you out. So you can train for 10 years to get on the Olympic team. And then by the time you get to the Olympic, your body and mind are just so exhausted, like you can't fucking do anything. And I just think that's a positive step, is we're finally like talking about mental health in the mainstream and kind of pointing out the problems that that capitalism contributes to that by compounding trauma. That's what the system likes to do. It compounds trauma so that people kind of keep churning through the cycle of all the bullshit that it has to offer. It was a very long-winded explanation.
No, that's great. But no, yeah, it just goes to show of, like, you know, he's an essentially Gitmo, and the idea of being sent to a American jail is like horrifying to him. It's like, what does that say about America? You know, like,
well, I think that was a point to high five for the prison industrial complex. They're like, yeah, we do get people to commit suicide. What's up? You know,
right.
Like,
or air quotes, you know, commit suicide, air quotes.
Right,
you know?
right.
I mean, the same thing with John McAfee. Like, I still don't believe he killed himself, but if you're going to play the angle that he did kill himself, the reason why he killed himself was possibly extradition to a U.S. prison. So, like, you know, what the fuck?
Yeah,
that should make people ask more questions than they're asking now.
Well, that to me, the story with Assange was kind of quieted, you know, aside from people like us and like real journalists. It wasn't really being covered on CNN or MSNBC. They weren't really talking about the fact that the reason why the UK judge that called him a narcissist and hates this guy doesn't want him extradited to the United States is specifically because his mental health would completely deteriorate in an American prison. And if that story hits the mainstream, if it gets on CNN or any of these, even if NPR decides to talk about it for 5 minutes in their polite Republican tones, you know, people would change their mind. people would change their mind about the prison industrial complex, and you would get hardliner, fucking anti-weed people to probably change their opinion on that too, because most of the people that are in prisons are in there for bullshit drug charges anyway.
Yeah.
So it would just spiral out and start changing people's opinions about a lot of these issues. And that's part of the reason why they don't want this sort of stuff to be discussed in the mainstream. But it's starting to become a little impossible.
Yeah,
But I was gonna say something real quick. I'm so sorry, Magnus. Go ahead.
No, if I go, yeah, I was just gonna like close out of just the to tie all that together. The massive problems we have over here of detaining people that aren't guilty or charged with anything yet. Like what they're doing to Jillian is the same thing they've done to a whole bunch of anti-lockdown protesters, where they essentially just hold them in jail long enough to either lose custody of their kids, or they get fired from their job, or get evicted from their house. And then finally they take them to trial like 6 months, 3 months, a year later. Oh, well, we have no case against you. It was all bullshit. You're free to go, but your entire life's ruined now. And this sends a message to all the other activists that we can grab you on nonsense and hold you and ruin your life and psychologically torture you for up to a year. And even if you're innocent, we're going to fuck your life up. And Assange is the biggest example of that, of being held, in one way or another for coming up on a decade, like on some bullshit with no criminal charges, but they can sit there and just torture him forever. And that's more important than killing him or actually charging him, is just showing that you have no due process and will come fuck you up if you step out of line.
Well, that's why Kara Castronova's work is so important, because she runs a group called Citizens Against Political Persecution, and
she was on the show. Which thank you for having her on the show, because that was awesome. She's great.
I love Kara. She is incredible. But literally, it started as a movement to free the people that were in prison January 6th, and has grown into a larger anti-political persecution movement across the board. So it's things like that I'm really excited to see that someone has picked that up personally, like the use of solitary confinement and political persecutions here in the United States, because domestic torture it's crazy.
Yeah, because they did that to Lauren Reed. He was a BLM activist down in Arizona. They held him for 6 months, no trial, no bail. They did that to my friend. They did it to my friend John. They did it to my friend Phil. They did it to Daniel Baker, which is the anti-fascist activist. They held him for 3 months, no trial, no bail. And now they're doing the same thing with all the January 6th people. And they sell this new thing that I'd never heard of up until like the last year, of being denied bail because they are deemed a threat to polite society, essentially, is the wording around it. So it's like
polite society.
But it's just vague. But that's vague enough. That's vague enough that they can say that to anybody, right?
Right.
Like that's sort of the other thing too, in terms of the way the legal system works, is it uses this very nebulous, vague language. So it can literally mean anything. Like anything could be like, oh, Magnus, you said the word fuck. That's not.
Right,
I'm very offended by it. That's not good for a polite society.
Well, I mean, look at that the UK protest bill, where I think the exact language was like a disturbing the peace, or like a disruption to calm public life, or something like that is what they said. They can shut down a protest. It's like, Chris, we pulled you over for DUI. We can't let you out of jail for 6 months because you might drink. Like, you're right. Like, there's so many ways you can apply that.
It's very, very, and all that stuff is kind of done on purpose. And again, I do feel like if people had a little bit more of a media literate sense in America, I think you'd be able to look at the laws that people pass and the way that it's written and decipher that. Like, a lot of people don't understand that these laws are written so vague so that it could literally be anything. And if they don't like you, or if they don't like your opinion or whatever, they can do whatever they want with it, right?
By the way, before I forget it, speaking of laws and not reading laws and a DUI, nobody's talking about it, but in the infrastructure bill, I think it's either 2023 or 2024, they legally mandated that every car that is produced has to have a breathalyzer in it for drugs and alcohol. Every vehicle in the United States. So
the early stages of that infrastructure bill, you have to have tracking where you go and stuff as well too.
Yeah,
third-party
nobody read
tracking and
that.
stuff. No,
Nobody
there's a lot of. I mean, that shit is crazy, and the
I
infrastructure.
don't even
bill
think
is
it'd
the
be
biggest.
called an infrastructure bill because it's everything but. That's what it should be
Well,
called.
that's every
Everything
single
but
fucking bill now.
infrastructure bill.
Yeah, I mean,
Every bill is filled with pork.
The Green New Deal was the best example of that, to where, like, as an environmentalist, I was like reading through this, like, I'm waiting for the part about like the trees and shit. Like,
Yeah, right. Why don't we address the bombs that are going off and disturbing the ozone layer that way? But really quickly too, though, I want to I don't want to say necessarily want to push back on what Chris was talking about over there for a second, but I think you'd be surprised too as well. There's a lot of minds that we do need to inform about this, and they don't talk about it. But Americans are very unique in the way they kind of like just they're okay. They're desensitized against war and are also desensitized against what they believe is to be truth and justice and punishment, whatnot. We already have the largest prison population in the world, whatnot. And I think they would still find some justification on what's going on, even with the people that Kara Cashinova is talking about every day and some of your friends, Magnus, because at the end of the day, they'll feel that they did something wrong and they should be rightfully punished. And Americans have a big threshold for what punishment should be. Even the left, not even I'm talking specifically about the people on the right, who believe in that truth and justice. This person should be killed. He took somebody's life. Whereas, me personally, I don't believe in the death penalty. I don't believe this society ever has the right to seek vengeance, has only the right to protect itself. But you'll see people on the left, too, with their virtuosity, where they think that the people on the right are doing something wrong, that they will justify the punishments of what's going on. And they also take the bait from what the deep state, the government, the three-letter agencies are doing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, the worst example of that was the Ashley Babbitt thing with the fucking cop. Like, I'd never been so disgusted to like look at anything on Twitter, because it's not even like the cop himself or the situation that bothered me that much, because I don't know, I'm desensitized to that just happens. Cops kill people in America. It's awful, but it happens. But just seeing the hordes of people like literally like 4th of July fireworks level celebrating in the chats of like, yeah, he killed a murderer and saved America. I'm like, my fucking God.
I still don't talk to a friend of mine. I blocked him because when he called, he said a dead Karen's a good Karen. She had no business doing that. I'm like, are you serious? And this is a person on the left that was crying about everything that happens. And that's the good thing about having a partner like Fiorella. She's consistent when it comes to that shit. When it comes to police brutality, left and right, she doesn't give a shit. She don't play games. And when you have people like that, it's always great to talk more about that and get that information out there, because you got to be consistent.
Yeah, remember though, Pasta, when I went on Jimmy Dore 8 months ago and said that I was worried about a civil war in America and trying to do everything to stop it, that I was crazy and fucking, like actively trying to start one or whatever the lies that came up. But then you see stuff like that where people are physically baying for the blood of their political enemies and cheering when they die. And obviously it's on the right too. Like, I deal with it all the time and I have to scream at people of like, oh, I should just mow down them protesters, or they should just, someone should just show up and just start shooting Antifa. And I'm like, oh my God.
Well, there was
anti-riot
police
bills?
radio recordings that got released out of New York City last year. And one of them was literally an officer who was like, just run over the son of a bitch.
That was Boston too. Boston had those giant leaks of them just essentially just being like, yeah, fuck it, kill them. And it's like, oh my God.
Well, what it reminded me of was the Collateral Murder audio, where you had the helicopter pilots that were just giddy to shoot. They were just like, hey, can we open fire? Let us shoot. And then after they'd circled around, after the U.S. had willfully run over bodies, which is one of the biggest war crimes you can commit, they're joking about, look at all those dead bastards. And then someone chimes in and just says, nice. While they're looking at innocent people and journalists just blown to pieces on the ground.
And then who ends up becoming the cops? It's all the vets of this, and they become the cops because that's the job that they can do, because they're so familiar with it, but they're not taking care of their traumas. They're not taking care of any of their anxieties or depression. They might not even be going to the VA. And even if they did, I have a friend that waited 10 years to get VA services and is still fighting them to get all the services that he needs, because they consider the injury that got him out of the army as not really that didn't get him out of the army, is what they're claiming. So they're only giving him a portion of what he's owed. and that took him 10 years to do. So even then, why would they go to the VA if that's the way that they're going to be treated? So let them go back to a different version of service, which is being a police officer. So if they're that callous in Iraq and Afghanistan and Syria and all that, of course they're going to bring that shit right back home, and they're going to look at the protesters and use the same kind of language. Like I think this was 2019. I was touring through North Carolina, and when I would listen to music, I would listen to Spotify, and I was poor, so I didn't fucking have the Spotify subscription or whatever. So I would listen to the ads every like 4 or 5 songs, and literally the only ad I heard all through North Carolina was about specifically looking for veterans to recruit into the police force. Like that's specifically what they were looking for in that area.
Yeah, and then there's like a whole another angle to that, to where the second to last guest I had on that 12-hour live stream is somebody a lot more people should talk to. I would love for Pasta, you have him on your show and everything, is my buddy Andrew. He goes by Inked Anarchist on Twitter. He worked as a private military contractor for 10 years. And he has like so much insider information on how like PMCs and stuff works. And one piece of detail on that he dropped on me was that half of his unit when he was in Africa, literally defending lithium mines, which is a whole nother thing, were either ex-DEA, FBI, DHS, like all these like domestic agencies, or they, after they left his unit and went back home, joined those agencies or joined the police department. And the paramilitary side is even worse, to where like there's just genuine war crimes going on with the PMCs all the time. And then those people are coming home and becoming cops, or those organizations are going to police departments and actively recruiting mercenaries out of our police forces to go wander around the Congo and shoot people trying to escape lithium mines and all sorts of crazy shit that he could talk to you about. And that's a whole nother angle of this that I think like the average person is not aware of. And we've been trying to address a lot is what the PMCs get up to, because everybody can talk about Blackwater. Blackwater is one of dozens, and Blackwater didn't even do like the most egregious kind of operations that we use PMCs for. Like Blackwater wasn't in Somalia or Africa or whatever at the mineral mines. They weren't carrying out assassinations and shit. And we know about Blackwater when we have agency hired mercenaries running around all over the world doing crazy shit. And Andrew, he's still under NDA for some of those, but he's not under NDA for others. And the kind of stories he can tell you about the things we get up to over there is ridiculous. And then, like you said, they come home and become cops. So it's like
PMC stands for private military contract.
Yep. So Blackwater,
you got to let some of us know that there, Magnus. All right.
Yeah, so I tried to say mercenaries over and over again as well, because that's what they are. Like he even describes it himself. Like, I was a murderer for hire for 10 years. It's just like, that's what it is.
Wild.
And then there's the other angle with the police for people who weren't former military or doing mercenary stuff. That the police are literally being trained in a bunch of cities to think of protesters and citizens as terrorists and the enemy. That like there's been leaks of the way that they train, and that's the language that's used. They're being trained for urban warfare, and so are parts of the military now. It's less like being out in the middle of nowhere training. It's like training in cities, because who is the next enemy? Is it us?
They have that whole thing in Georgia where they're cutting down like 200 acres of old growth forest to essentially build a giant live action role play city for police to do riot training in.
Yeah,
which is like, ooh, that's great.
It's a small world for police.
Well, speaking of riot training, one of the things that scares me, and this isn't related to anything, I just made me think of it. In South Korea, they had an app that parents had to download and a child had to download on both of their cellular devices or on a tablet or what have you, to allow the parents to monitor the children. And the other thing that it would do is scan devices for child pornography and illicit content, illegal substances, things like that. It's very similar to what Apple says they're doing, like if not the same thing. And what ended up happening is it got found out and released to the general public that there were members of the intelligence agencies in South Korea that were implanting child pornography, and I think it was specifically hentai was banned, planting hentai onto people's devices specifically to be able to go and arrest them with the flag that would then go off on their application. And it got to the point that where literally the South Korean president had to go on TV and apologize for it. And it was part of a larger story, but it's fucking crazy. Because when you actually saw what happened in the country, they broke out into riots, but their police units had been training essentially in Roman shield tactics. And when it turned into literally barbarians versus the police, like, you could literally just watch them, like, doing crazy, like, not even like kettling like you have here in the US, but literally like shield walling and shit like that. So I'm fucking horrified if that's the way that they're trying to push all this, because that's where other countries it's already been beta tested, essentially.
Apparently our New Zealand police are all registered in America. I found out.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Same thing with all of our riot training and police manuals having Israeli military.
Israeli.
Yeah.
Right. And do you remember the piece of paper that someone zoomed into outside the Ecuadorian embassy where they had a policeman standing guard, and someone managed to get a high resolution screenshot of what was on his piece of paper? And there had been a lot of outrage in the British media about how much money was being spent on keeping Assange in the Ecuadorian embassy. And then there was this policeman, and he wasn't very careful with where he was looking at his cheat sheet. And they zoomed in on it, and the amount of stuff on it was just incredible, like in terms of the rules that they were willing to flout, in terms of, British police, I believe, are covered by common law, same as Australian and New Zealand. They're supposed to be protecting and facilitating protest, and they seem to have completely missed this by. Someone in the chat was asking us to talk about Commander X. I thought I should just tell you as well on the YouTube chat.
Yeah.
But guys, I have to go.
Commander
It's
X?
7:30, right? I have to go. I am so sorry. That's my
good.
90
Yeah.
minutes.
I think
I don't
Trish
have to get on
actually has
the
to bounce
table.
on us soon, too. If you
Bye,
want to give
Pastor.
yourselves little outros and let everybody know where they can find you.
All right. Well, Pasta Jardula, thank you so much, Andrew. Love you always. You're like the third person on the list of people to black pill me and to also help the Convo Couch get to where we are today, talking about 3 later agencies, digging into far deeper to the motives behind our foreign policy. And I thank you for having me coming on. I'm always glad that you're doing this visual and keep it going, because it's really important. We always talk about Assange. Krish, this is our first time talking. That's a shame. You've done shows already with my partner. She wants to have you on. She always talks about you and stuff too as well.
Oh,
Candles,
very nice.
I know how it is there in New Zealand. I don't know. I know the one thing I've always noticed, and you got to answer this to me, like, people from New Zealand say they're different from people from Australia, and people from Australia say they're different from New Zealand. But why are your governments acting so in line together, authoritarian as fuck? That's what I want to know.
Because we're Five Eye vassal states. It's real simple. I mean, New Zealand trained the white helmets. I don't know if people know that. And fully embedded.
I did not know that. That's crazy.
Yeah. And Jacinda worked for Tony Blair while he was being his chief war criminal. I mean, during the Iraq War. So she trained with the best. And most people see her here as being this really amazing person. Half of Australia want her as a prime minister. But they have no idea what's really going on under the surface in terms of what bills are being introduced. Arrest without warrant, removal of habeas corpus, putting people in asylums because of their political opinion, locking up protesters and banning them from the internet, taking political parties off the internet. It's unbelievable what's been ushered in while all this has been going on. And all the while, all the New Zealanders, seem to be gushing about how much she's protected them and how much they owe her their lives, and it's frightening.
Well, a lot of
people are aware.
synthetic left, they love her. They talk about her all the time.
And
I'm glad.
I think she'd be the globalist queen if they gave her a chance. She'd be the first one elected to take her role, because she's really been a very good, obedient prime minister, hasn't she?
These people, they're crazy. But I'm glad you're holding it down in New Zealand for Assange.
Yeah, it's all good.
I really do. So,
Yeah,
Mr. Lubers, it's great hearing your voice every time you speak. I love it. It's amazing. That great accent. Thank you so much. It's nice to finally get on the horn and do a show with you too as well. And Emma, we got to meet in the streets of Washington, D.C. Your footage, your photography is amazing. One of my favorite pictures we have, and we have a video coming out, the Fuck Censorship video, where you're actually in it, Emma. Andrew and Magnus, but there's one shot of us walking down the streets holding the Free Assange, Fuck Censorship banner, and Magnus is on one of those rental scooters, Paul, with the guy with the mask on and the Clovers for Assange sweatshirt. So that's
we'll have to talk if that shattered some images of me and the type of person I am, of my dorky ass on a little power scooter.
I got Jason Burmis to ride on one of those little power scooters. That was like the highlight of my life.
In Louisville, you had NFAC riding around on them in like full kit with guns on like little scooters.
Well, guys, really quick too, Magnus, I got to jump on out, but I really do want to say really too quick that I love you, man, and I'm proud to call you my friend. You know, ever since you've been on our show right after Jimmy, our life has kind of also made a little kind of change. I think that's when a lot of lines were drawn in the sand, and we were going to be on the lines of truth and justice. We weren't going to play team sports, and that's why I'm proud to call you my friend and proud to say I love you, and I don't give a fuck what anybody does say, Boogaloo Boy or not, or whatever their thoughts are. And that's why I beat up Matt Binder for you really hard.
I love you, Posse. You're making me blush. You can't see, but my camera's busted, but I'm blushing.
It is the micro of the macro we need to talk about. Everybody's demonizing each other. Like I said, you know what I'm saying? They're getting all tribal. They're pointing fingers and stuff like that. And they want to make opinions about people they've never even met or known. And you saw we interviewed, we debated with Matt Binder. It's like he's saying all this stuff about you. He's never even talked to you or attempted to talk to you or attempt to get to know you. Just make up stories, whatnot. And for anybody to say that you're racist of any sort whatsoever, they don't know you, they don't know who you are, and they're full of shit. And that's why it's easy for me to say I love you. And I love you, Andrew, and I love you all, everybody else. Thank you so much. Stay away from that fucking vaccine.
the king of the wholesome pasta. Too much.
I gotta hop off too. It was good to see you guys. Thank you guys for having me, and I'll see you guys in 2 weeks. Yeah.
Thank you, buddy.
Emma has to come out. We still have to bully Emma into showing up to DC.
Yeah, I gotta figure that out still.
This is the Emma appreciative moment. Pasta gassed you up. You are like this girl is low key so awesome, and she tries to hide it and pretend it's not cool. And she's like, yeah, you know, I'm just like normal and boring and blah blah blah. And then she's getting like awesome pictures, like in the middle of a riot with like explosives going off around her. Like, oh, I'm perfectly normal and unassuming. No, Emma's the shit. Everybody needs to follow her. She's spectacular. She does great work.
And I just had a cat appear on my lap.
Yep. All of the cat's backing me up. The cat's like, yeah, see.
Well, thanks.
So, speaking of
I need to deflect all of the.
I think this will be something fun to go through with the group that we have. Mark has a piece that he put out, I think it was like a week and a half ago maybe, about the use of controlled opposition by the intelligence agencies. Mm-hmm. Do you want to talk about that a little bit, Mark? And I don't know how much time anybody has, so if you need to bounce, please let me know.
Yeah, but before that, perhaps you should pitch real fast and the damn wars protest.
Yes.
Because I've been sharing this show in all these Discord servers with lots of announce in it.
So the thing that we were just joking about, Emma, with, we have the End the Damn Wars events coming up September 10th, 11th, and 12th in DC. The 10th is a media march on like the north side of town where there's a bunch of local media stations. We're stopping by 3 local TV stations out there. And then we have on Saturday our rally at John Marshall Park, and then a march from there to Lafayette Park. And then on Sunday, we're going to be outside of the British Embassy on Massachusetts. I think it's 3100 Massachusetts Avenue. Because the whole idea is a fuck censorship, end the damn wars, free Assange, protests all coming together. Because these are different things that different groups have been working on. Kimber and Magnus have done absolutely amazing. I've helped out where I can behind the scenes with the End the Damn Wars stuff. But the links to all of that is in the description for whatever platform you're watching us on right now.
We just announced our Portland event. We just announced our Las Vegas event, and we're announcing our Denver event either tonight or tomorrow. I'm just waiting on the thing to get back from the guy. So we're up to 11 local events, and none of them are in the Midwest because apparently nobody in the Midwest wants to do anything. So if you want to be someone in the Midwest to step up and do a local event, please reach out to us on End the Damn Wars on Twitter. We have open DMs. I do nothing but unemployed and do nothing but look at my Twitter, so I will get back to you immediately.
But I appreciate you, Mark, 'cause I probably wouldn't have talked about this till the end. The cool thing about having both of you guys on here is being able to reach out to the international community as well to get the same types of events or themed events happening in the international circles for the Free Assange groups and things like that. So if you're someone watching in Australia or in Europe or New Zealand, what have you, please consider starting the events too. You can use the same graphics. We'll promote them the exact same way.
Yeah, well, the United States is far from the only country that has bombed the Middle East for the last 20 years, and many more have provided material support and everything. So I don't care if you're in Japan or Korea or anywhere. Like we were half joking of having like a Kabul end the damn wars protest, but then yeah, obviously that wouldn't have gone smoothly. But literally anywhere in the world, we want people to get on this. We want to make this big, and even just
in
just
Australia, New Zealand, if we could potentially offer like an online way of doing that, as well as potentially sending out people to the street. I think there will be people who are a bit nervous given, I mean, there was 250 arrested in Australia for daring to come out of lockdown, and I think about 19 here. 2 bans completely from the internet, so I don't know what happened to the woman that was organising the truckie protest in Australia, but
you guys
I think people are a bit worried.
Let's say you guys had that whole. You guys had that whole news story where they deployed like the riot squad and like one guy. It was like one guy protesting.
Yeah, in Auckland. I think it was more than one, but basically it was to get 2 people in Auckland. If you're talking about that one, or if you're talking about in Australia, that's a different kettle of fish. But yeah, I was just wondering. There may be some people who are willing to go out and do it. And it really depends. Like Auckland's still in massive lockdown. Like they're not allowed 5 kilometers from their house. But maybe there's a way of doing it on your exercise routine, even if you're just a one person. Or maybe there's a way of, sending out people who are comfortable and doing online
thing. It's a great way to
thing.
get exercise.
Yeah, I was gonna say, just literally go for your evening jog while holding up an end of the damn war sign.
Yeah.
Or make a little sandwich, wear it, then it's easier. Just wear it around your neck and your back, and there's totally tons of options.
I always wear a yellow ribbon when I'm walking out with Free Assange on it.
Is this hype queen Glory Jones?
This is hype queen Glory Jones.
Yes, sir.
Hey, Glory.
Hype. Yeah, we're just talking about the collapse of Western civilization, the expanding.
Yeah, I know. I fucking heard y'all talking about cops, and I was like, "Damn, this."
Yep, we lost her.
Okay, well, what's the tempo left?
She was just like, "Damn," and there's
cops. Man.
Yeah, well, no, because so I couldn't catch y'all through everything because like I had your volume low because like full disclosure, I was modding from class, so I was just like I had y'all on low volume at the same time, and I heard you mention like police and shit and how they're all connected, and I'm like. Yo, so basically after I was detained, the cunt that led the team who did that, his name is Sergeant Brian Mueller, he helped lead courses at this international law enforcement forum, which was basically attended by police all around the world, including some members of the British police. And it was just interesting because I found that out at the same time that all the UK protesters were getting harassed. So I thought that was interesting, but yeah.
Actually, see, you popping in here, Glory, reminded me that I have to ask Emma about something because this is a subject you have like firsthand experience because you were at Brooklyn Center. I've been running around because there's a little detail that was missed in the Afghanistan thing of the media was shitting their pants over biometric scanners being lost to the Taliban.
Yeah.
Those same biometric scanners were used in Brooklyn Center on journalists and protesters. And that's why I was glad you were here because you were there during all of that shit. So
yeah, I actually wasn't there that night that they got all of the journalists and took pictures of their faces. Like, thankfully.
Yeah, you weren't biometrically scanned.
Yes,
because you can look up the pictures of the device. They use them in Afghanistan. It almost looks like a big Polaroid camera. It almost like a really big one of those, but it's actually like gets like all the biometric data on your face, like your pores, your irises, like everything. They were using those on just weird. Like journalists and BLM protesters in Brooklyn Center.
I know. And they're open about it too. Like they'll straight up point the shit right at you and be like, "Oh yeah, zoom in," and I'm just
they were making everybody like all the press had to show their credentials, and they took a photo of their credentials and then did the stuff where they were looking at their face and everything before
it's
letting most of them go. But.
Yep, and that's like people are like, it's the End the Damn Wars podcast. Why are you talking about like police brutality? And it's like, well, funny you mention it. Like, there's a lot of
crossover. Like all of it, really. It's like.
I mean, like fucking, tear gas and chemical gas and concussion grenades, stinger grenades, whatever you call them. Yeah, they're concussion grenades, okay? But like all that stuff is technically prohibited on peaceful protesters by the Geneva Convention. So it's like you don't think that if you've been to a protest in America, you'd be like a victim of a war crime, but no, you are.
Well, yeah, like other Andrew, Inked Anarchist, the guy who worked for the paramilitary companies, was said that they would always joke around in the barracks that it was called the Geneva Suggestion because they would do things like technically it's a violation of the Geneva Convention for a sovereign military to deploy forces that are not in uniform, that are in civilian clothes, because obviously there's false flag stuff and impersonating civilians and everything. The PMCs would just do that all the time. Like they would just go out in like jeans and like a white wife beater with a bulletproof vest and just go like, commit war crimes. And
they're so obvious too. They're so fucking obvious. It's like, bruh, you're not slick. Undercovers. I think I was at a Breonna Taylor march once, and 2 undercovers showed up drunk. I'm like, are you guys dumb?
Glory will make us blend in more if we just get fucking hammered before we go.
Yeah, man, we won't stick out at all.
I shared that picture on my Twitter of like spot the 7 things that show this is an undercover cop, and it was like fucking headset wire coming out of his shirt, bulletproof vest under his plain wife beater, high and tight cut, like combat boots.
Oh, bro, I can't
handcuffs
wait.
in his back pocket.
Now that I'm back in LA, I can't wait to hit the ground again for these anti-mandate protests and just play like Spot the Op. Like you know me. Like I will literally go in a fucking line and be like, op, officer cunt face, op. Ooh, you're slick. Op.
Yeah. Like I said, it's the good old Carl Hess quote of if you have 4 people in a room, at least one is an undercover agent. And it's like, yep.
Yeah. I didn't mean to derail y'all's conversation.
No, I love it.
Glory, what was the proportion of operatives to normal people at these?
Yeah. Carl
was it like
Hess,
1 in 4, or is it like worse?
I thought it was 2 in 10.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, if you look at Michigan, it's 10 out of 14. So
right.
If you go to LA, it's like 9 out of 11, probably.
If you look up, I'll drop it in the chat for everybody. Signature reduction. It's actually an outline by Newsweek of what the fuck is making our world so crazy right now, or part of it. There was people at the Pentagon that basically came forward and said that there's a 60,000 person domestic private military operating in both uniform and under civilian cover. So I'm going to drop that link in there because that's literally the cops we're talking about is at this point these players from the Pentagon that are moving in and basically the quid pro, or not quid pro quo, the COINTELPRO that's happened since 9/11. This is basically essentially an admission of that.
Yeah, that's the thing I've been screaming up and down to the heavens is the lead officer, the lead FBI agent that was running the Whitmer kidnapping plot, conveniently transferred to Washington, D.C. 2 weeks before January 6th. Draw any conclusions from that you want, and that same guy got involved with a private surveillance company that makes neo-Nazi porn, which is a whole nother angle of what the hell. Yeah, the Whitmer kidnapping plot gets weirder by the day. The more I keep digging into it, and all the players involved are just like, what the hell is going on here?
Keep in mind that 60,000 is, of course, like the official number, right? There is like
Right, that's the number that they give.
Yeah,
60,000.
yeah.
Which, so we know, is not the right number.
Right.
No, because even in my own country, they used to pay students, for example, $50 to make pictures at protests of interesting protesters, right? And that's what they just did. They would contact random students, and they would do the dirty work for them. Like there was no
How
link
many
to.
at the riot do you reckon were? Because Glenn Greenwald was talking about quite a few of them were FBI agents or potential FBI informants because they got let off. Wasn't that quite a lot of the people that were supposedly there?
Yeah, the leader of the Oath Keepers and I think 4 lieutenants of the Oath Keepers are all under federal protection and essentially witness protection. Obviously, Enrique Tarrio just got the most comfortable drug snitch charge I've ever seen in my life.
Oh, you mean Enfedke Tario?
Yeah, 18 months in jail for assault, possession of illegal weaponry, and destruction of property. 18 months. Yeah, that's a drug snitch charge if I've ever seen it. We'll let you cool off in the pen to make it look like you're not an obvious Fed, and then we'll let you go. Probably like half your sentence on good behavior or something. I'm calling it now.
So how does that compare to the number in Dale? And how does it compare to the number that are in prison supposedly for the Capitol riot? Like in terms of numbers, there's loads.
Yeah, I mean, there's that one metal musician who's literally being. I think he's facing like a couple years in prison for aggressively pointing his finger at a cop on January 6th. And then Tario and the Oath Keeper people, no charges. So
there are like people and quote unquote streamers and journalists from Los Angeles that were like pictured to be at the whole January 6th debacle, and they're just roaming the streets and interacting with everyone perfectly fine. And yeah, and mind you, like, especially because it's LA, that like the proper Antifa people are going to have like full docs files on them. So like if the FBI wanted to find some of these streamers, they could. Yet here they are, perfectly fine, working as the little fucking informant snitch bitch asses they are.
Yeah, that's the thing. There's so many, that signature reduction thing, plus just the expanse of the FBI in general. Like, there's just so many layers of you can't trust anybody. Like every organization is full of feds. That's why it always cracks me up to my core when people are like anti-fascist organizations are extremely vetted. We don't have FBI infiltration. I'm like, bullshit, dude. Fucking Steven Crowder was able to get into one of your fucking groups. Like, what do you mean? Like, like clownish shit ever. But yeah, that's the thing. And that's why when I see what's going on in Portland and everything between the Proud Boys and fucking Antifa and shit, I'm just like, fed.
Right. That's literally me in LA. Yeah. It's like, and they walk together in groups too. It's like, oh, so the ops are here now. Okay. And I mean, it's like, if you're a protester, that's the thing where you have to be, not afraid to call that bullshit out, because I mean, one of the things that I'll do is like, if I see someone undercover who's like an obvious undercover, a lot of times they'll be carrying like these huge backpacks with them. So, I'll look at like one other person I semi-trust and be like, hey, can we go ask that person if they're a medic? Boom.
Right, exactly. That's the same thing we were doing in Louisville. A guy walked up to me, ball cap facing forward, plain white shirt, blue jeans, and like boots with a big ass backpack. And he's like, "Is this where the protest is at?" And like, we're like, "Yep." And as soon as he walked away, I immediately got on my radio. And it's funny because it's actually in that Turkish media interview of me where they called me a leftist, which was super funny. Where you could literally see me get on my radio and be like, "This guy is totally a fucking cop." Like
at the Cleveland Department of Justice, they had a chick standing there with combat boots on, trying to give people a skateboard, and 10 feet behind her was a cop with a paintball gun with pepper balls in it, and I'm like,
hello, comrade. I've seem to have stumbled upon this pile of bricks. Would you care to partake in some delinquency with me, fellow hoodlum?
Right. And yeah, there's so much of that. And again, like this is all stuff fucking Assange talked about. This is all stuff that like came out through a lot of the anons and everything. I had someone blow up on me actually during that live stream because I mentioned that the first time I ever learned about COINTELPRO was through anons and through like WikiLeaks and stuff. And they were like, well, how dare you accredit that to WikiLeaks? And I'm like, I don't know. That's just where I found it the first time. Like, why are you getting so mad at me? You know? Like,
I mean, this probably smacks us to why we have like practically 2 cities per major city around the world of Assange activists that are fighting with each other. It probably comes down to this sort of bullshit. I mean, sometimes it comes down to, I guess, protests getting co-opted by other movements. Perhaps you don't want it to overly identify with being socialist, or you don't want to identify with being this group or that group, and often that is why. But I'm pretty sure that a lot of these are being divided into smaller protests by the fact that there are these agents even in New Zealand, even in Australia. I think that they're everywhere, unfortunately.
yeah.
And it makes it very easy for you to become quite paranoid and perhaps like jump at shadows. I've been there myself.
But you
yeah.
don't have to be paranoid about it, because usually it is like that. It is legitimate opinions exist in society, and it is much cheaper for them to start to co-opt something than to start something of themselves. So for themselves, so they send in some people who start repeating the stuff you're saying too, right? And they start offering you things like they know someone who can print flyers for you, right? They know someone who can do this for you, can do this for you, and they just repeat your stuff. And then when your event happens, suddenly the media only walks to them, right? They allowed them to say the things they
yeah.
want.
I have personal example with that a lot of people don't know about with my movement. Of we existed for 6 months as a very decentralized, leaderless kind of thing. A lot of us are ex-anons. We borrowed heavily from the original anonymous movement and how we organized and how we conducted ourselves. And then out of nowhere, this little 19-year-old kid named Mike Dunn appeared out of Virginia. And all of a sudden, all the media were running right to him and talking to him and giving him interviews and proclaiming him the leader of the movement. And he started organizing events and all this other shit. And then it came out in February that he was a federal informant and that he was actively working to get people arrested. And it's like, oh, wow, that's sure interesting that this person just materialized out of nowhere, claimed to be like an ex-prison guard or something, even though you can't even get that job till you're 21, and like ended up getting a bunch of people arrested. So it's super sus. And I mean, even in the COINTELPRO, I'm sure Glory could probably correct some of these details, but they had that one thing with the Black Panthers where one of the higher up people in the organization was actually working for the FBI, and they were intentionally sending like divisive letters and picking fights with other Black liberation organizations to like cause infighting and division. And that's all the FBI wanted them to do, was essentially just talk shit to other people in the movement to cause infighting. So that's why whenever I see people doing divisive shit or being very like explicit anti-unity, I just call them a Fed, because even if they're not a Fed, they're doing the Fed's work for free, because that's what they've been trying to do for 60 years.
Acting like a Fed. And the thing is like, I'm not saying, if someone does something you disagree with, go and call them a Fed. It's just that like in today's day and age, in this post COINTELPRO world, where you literally had FBI staging like planted assets at every street corner, like in a post that society, you need to be able to expect this kind of shit. So like, I like, if someone has a problem with me, I'll face it straight up with them, because I know what it feels like to be on the other side of that, to be sus of someone like that. So it's like, okay, what, like, I'll work it out with you.
Yeah, I've been accused of being a Fed like 100 times. I've been willing to show everybody everything short of my bank statement. Like I've taken pictures of the inside of my fridge for people and shit, because that's kind of
Magnus, you definitely go very far with that shit.
Because but I understand that it's a legit paranoia for some people, because so many people have been walked into getting arrested by everything. My friend Teeter over in Minneapolis, that he's the whole thing where he got entrapped selling suppressors to quote unquote Hamas. It wasn't Hamas, even though the media keeps saying it is. It was a federal agent. The whole reason that even happened is his friend convinced him to go to that deal, and his friend was a federal informant. So the only reason he even went to sell suppressors to a Hamas FBI agent was because his friend who was working for the FBI convinced him to go do it, which, you know, smacks of things like Ruby Ridge and other entrapment shit they do. So it's justifiable paranoia. You just have to kind of accept and counter it in a way.
I remember when that happened here, and most people who don't pay enough attention to things were just upset and they were already looking for like Boogaloo Boys out at the protests and stuff, and like being wrong about that whole thing.
And by the way, that's the fun detail about that. Teeter is an anarcho-socialist, so that's a whole another.
Oh no, not like one of the 50,000 offshoots of anarchism.
Yeah,
it's like, well, actually, I'm an anarcho-Marxist.
I think there might be more than 50,000 actually. I think
oh my god,
I think that was an underestimate.
Well, no, there's anarcho douchebagism, anarcho bubblegumism. I don't even know.
Well, no, you and Kimber had that whole thing where you guys literally just said colors and concepts, and I pulled up a different picture of anarchism for like every one.
Yeah.
But yeah,
it's like metal music. How they're like people are like, "Nah, I'm liquid metal," and this other one's like, I'm like
I'm sludge metal, bro. Yeah, there's 100 of them. But that was the funny thing about that too, is you had all these left-wing people being like, "See, this is a violent terrorist movement because they sold suppressors to Hamas," and then these same people, and I called some of them out on Twitter when Israel started striking Palestine. We're like, free Palestine. And I'm like, you motherfuckers have no principles whatsoever.
Yeah, that was just kind of interesting to observe, because I don't think I was like really paying attention to what was going on with that. But I saw it starting being in the news, and I saw people here locally sharing it. And then I was like, oh, okay, well, the FBI. And then I was like, selling to Hamas? Like, no, no, this is not.
Why is a Palestinian paramilitary organization buying firearm suppressors from some two dorky white dudes in Minneapolis, Minnesota? Like, answer me that question, please.
Exactly. Yeah, even that in itself is like no. But then throw in the FBI, and I was like, okay, I get what's going on here.
Every single news story about that literally sells it straight faced, like he got busted doing weapons deal with Hamas, and never mentioned that Hamas was not involved at all at any point. They even did an official statement, like the actual organization over Palestine had to do a media release being like, we had nothing to do with this, because it was just the FBI. It was the FBI on every single side of that fucking thing. Like,
it's funny because if people actually, like, people just care so much about things on a surface level. Like, a lot of people shared that, and then people were like, oh no, I have to look out all the time for the Boogaloo Boys now, because did you hear about what they were doing with Hamas? But then like nobody asked, like, someone was Hamas here? Like they never followed up like useful questions. Like,
don't you? Wait, and a lot of those people support Hamas too, which is even funnier. Like, what the fuck?
But not in that context, no. And then
I just again like the Taliban made a statement about us today, and Hamas made a statement about us 6 months ago. So this is the weirdest timeline ever. Weird, yeah. I'm just having all of these, all of these fucking Anyways,
so the end the damn wars should go really, really well.
For people that don't know, they already released a statement kind of like poisoning the well on it, where they said that the DC Metro Police were worried about our event and possible violence around September 11th. So that's cool.
Well, I mean, to be fair, when we were in DC in January, they had to stage a whole political insurrection. So
that's true. That is a good point.
That's the real conspiracy. January 6th was to cover up the Assange.
I live in a weird world, let me tell you.
I'm pretty sure COVID was just because of Assange activists having 55 cities that they were regularly protesting in. And I'm sure that the COVID lockdowns only happened because of those.
What I wish people would do is say, before COVID, I was doing, and because of COVID, I can no longer do.
I will say it is interesting how every time a big day of action comes up for Julian Assange, a bunch of these, culture war geared events start popping up. I mean, I can't speak to whatever was I don't know if something was going on March 17th, but I can speak for April 11th for sure, because some cucks tried to organize freaking White Lives Matter marches on on April 11th, which was the 2-year anniversary of Julian Assange being dragged out of the Ecuadorian embassy in London.
And nobody showed up to any of those protests. That's a very important thing.
No,
that was
but
only social media.
Here's the problem: was you had like maybe half a dozen people that were like, okay, legitimate Nazis, but then they had hundreds of counter protesters, and it's like, oh, y'all just took the bait completely. Because I mean, like, we said the moment the March 17th event ended, we were like, okay, April 11th, what are we doing? We're going to go here, 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 got you. Like literally in the Airbnb, like we were standing in a circle talking about this. So like we had this, several weeks in advance. Then suddenly I see like rumblings from LA independent media, maybe like 2 weeks before the event, like, oh, white supremacists are planning a White Lives Matter march for April 11th. And I'm like, are you fucking kidding me?
And do you know what's happening on September 18th, which is even more perfect, Glory, to continue this theory? Fuentes and his fucking idiots are doing a protest in DC.
Not that little man.
Yes.
Listen, I am like convinced too I am genuinely convinced that White Lives Matter thing was an op, because I actually went into their Telegram chat and I asked them straight up, I was like, yo, why are you organizing an event that distracts from Julian Assange's extradition on an important date in his persecution? And they're like, this date was organized by normal white people. This has nothing to do with Julian Assange. You can come up with a shitty conspiracy about any day of the month, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, okay, bye. And then the whole chat went private.
And I mean, like, I don't know if you saw the goofiest thing I'd ever seen in the world, the straight pride thing or whatever the fuck happened in Portland a couple days ago. Mm-hmm. Ford released a video on it. That was the most weird and fake thing I'd ever seen in my life. There was like,
I can't with the culture war. I can't.
No, it was like 24 people there, like split 50-50 between the groups. There's this moment where this anti-fascist guy steps up to this Proud Boy and stands perfectly still, and then someone over the megaphone's like, punch him, and then he punches him, and then like they fight for like 3 seconds, and then the entire fucking riot squad gets deployed. There's like 30 cops there in riot gear. They're in a riot line. They start doing the whole like move thing, and then the camera pans, and there's like 3 people standing there, and they're like calmly like walking away while this like riot line's like walking towards them, and I'm like, what the hell am I watching? This doesn't seem real. Like, even if it isn't fake, I have to say it's fake because it looks so stupid, and I couldn't imagine this happening in like a fucking functional society. Like, what the hell?
Yeah.
Maybe we should do a secret Assange activism day, like a global secret, only tell each other in private signal messages about it and see what happens. Maybe
caveat, we won't be using Signal.
Yeah.
Oh, well,
yeah.
Whichever one. Which one are you guys using, Wire or something else?
We use Wire, or Slow News Day uses Element.
I don't
Okay,
trust
well,
any
whichever way.
Yeah. If
Yeah.
it's on the internet,
I mean, if it's online, it's bound to be sus to some degree, but at the same time, it's like, yeah.
I like to diversify my communication, say like a portion of one sentence on 3 different platforms,
dude,
because then it's a lot harder for them to piece it back together.
This is a true story. The Unity Coalition formed out of me and a Michigan anti-fascist sitting in Lansing and complaining for an hour straight about how everyone wanted to constantly switch apps. That conversation. So there's me, like a boog with like a gun and like body armor, talking to this person in all black with their face covered about like, yeah, and then the next week they want to use Wire, and then we moved to Telegram, and then we moved to Element, and that's the Unity Coalition formed over like bonding over bitching about encryption.
Interestingly
But
enough,
I do have to bounce though. I do have some other things I have to do. But same thing I told Plasta, Glory, I have to get you in touch with my other friend Andrew. I had him on the End of the Damn War stream. He worked for PMCs for like 10 years. and he has all sorts of like crazy insider. He literally did armed security for lithium mines in the Congo and shit. Like so it's so far up what you guys talk about. That I was like, I need to get you in touch with Steve and Glory because like this is perfect. But yeah, thank you everybody. Emma, you're the best.
We need to get you a new webcam, by the way, buddy. Start a GoFundMe or a fundraiser or something.
I'm running 4 GoFundMes right now. I can't. Our fucking one of our friends fucking vet suicided, and then we're running fundraiser for the Cajun Navy, and then there's End the Damn Wars, and then there's Action for Assange. I can't bleed my followers for any more money right now. I'll just be the faceless voice for a while. It is what it is.
That's fair.
But yeah,
we'll figure out a way. We'll make it happen.
Yeah, appreciate all.
Nice to meet you, Magnus.
Nice to meet you,
Magnus.
Catch y'all later.
Nice to talk to you.
Yeah, you better come into DC, Emma, or I'll kidnap you and bring you along.
Yeah, maybe you could just kidnap me. Just plan to kidnap me and take. That's
cool.
That's fine.
Yeah. We'll chain of custody of you to Michigan. They'll sneak you on the plane. It'll work.
That's less planning for me if you just want to take care of that.
All right, I'll catch y'all later.
Bye.
But I took an opposite approach to that leading up to January 6th. Towards like the second or third week in December, I emailed specifically every city council, mayor, and police chief in the country that has a Department of Justice located.
I think that was the coolest thing you've done, Andrew. It was so awesome. I love it. I just love it. The amount of discussion you would have like actually generated by doing that would have just been worth it on its own.
I can't believe you took the time to do that shit.
No, I did, and I still have like the digital infrastructure built in my email, and I've used it like 4 or 5 times since then. But I literally told just the police chiefs and those kinds of people, like elected local officials, that there was going to be between 1,000 and 2,000 people turning out. And it's literally written the number 1 dash the number 2,000. So you couldn't say I lied to them, and that's the way that I talked to them on the phone and shit. But it went from me getting like a couple calls from like mayors or the police chief to like I got a call from like almost every person in the Department of Homeland Security that was like, just so you know, the Department of Justice is under our jurisdiction. I'm like, I'm just informing you that there may or may not be a protest. So that was a fun way. That might actually be a really good strategy for lockdown countries. Just tell the police that there's so many protests that it's overwhelming, and then have them.
Although we're so nailed down, they'll probably come and arrest you for that. It is getting there, honestly. But no, I mean, it would be great if you could get a secure communication and actually do something like you just did there. I'm not sure. I mean, maybe if it was a level 2, then there'd be less trouble. We're still in level 3 here and level 4 in Auckland.
Or you just need someone from outside
but
your country.
But we could pretend that we're probably going to be able to get out anyway, and then just assume that if we can't get out, that we have a few alternate options. And if you guys are doing something on live and you want to come to us again like you did last time for the first event as it goes around the world, then we can be the first event, or maybe Auckland can, depending on what's happening. We can definitely do something. So, but on the 10th, you think you're going to do media, and on the 11th, you're going to do embassies and government offices?
The 10th is media, and we may actually
media march.
And then the 11th is the big, that's supposed to be like the big anti-war rally. And then the 12th is the Assange. And they're all the same thing. It's not like they're separate and distinct from one another, but it's just like the theme we were putting behind each of them, I guess.
Yeah, I like it. Okay. I mean, if there was a way that maybe if we don't get to do something on the streets, that we can, come to you as an online, and I can get a few people online that would have been there anyway. Or we could pre-record something for you and show you an online protest, depending on how we do it, I guess. But yeah, it would be really nice if we can get out on the street, and we can also suggest that thing of going around with a billboard or going around with a sign or a yellow ribbon or chalking on the street. All those things can still be done when you're exercising. So there's no reason why that would be illegal, or I'm pretty sure they won't send police to the door about that unless I do damage to property like I did to the apparently High Commission. But
How is
I
it
had
with
police to my
the
door because I put chalk on the fence of the High Commission. I got an official warning.
Chalk.
Chalk can be
Yeah.
very, very
how is it with
corrosive.
the
It can,
one
I know, right?
one
Yeah.
person protests in your countries? Is there a difference for that? Because I think
Oh,
here it's
they had
technically-
10 police come for one person because they were protesting in Wellington. One person was doing a solo protest, and they sent like 11 police or something ridiculous like that to him.
Okay.
So most people, after what happened to Billy TK and what happened to like Vinnie Eastwood is, I guess, the only one of the few New Zealand kind of alternate media sort of sites. There is a couple of others, but yeah, he's one of the main ones, and he's been not only deleted but also banned off the internet completely, like Billy TK. So, given that happened in the first evening of the very first lockdown, on day one, and they were in jail for 3 days, and then they were completely banned from the internet. Now they've got other people speaking for them online. You don't know whether they're really those people or, given that happened so quickly on a week, about 10 days ago now, 8 days ago now, I think that is freaking people out about even organizing anything. So that's why you won't find people organizing. They like it when other people organize and they might turn up, but it's less. No one really wants to be the person to put their head on the block in Australia or New Zealand, I think, in some ways.
you should get somebody outside of the country to organize everything.
Yeah,
and then
be
just
great.
give the directions to people. And if it's something while they're exercising, I feel like there could be a lot of fun things that people could do with that. Like just draw attention to how absolutely absurd it is, and wear things and chalk as you're like moving down the sidewalk or whatever. Like it could be.
That's a really great idea. That would be like a decentralized way of organizing protests and take the person who's in danger out of that country. So I can organize them for, Mexico. And then, places that don't have an extradition treaty or whatever, something. With the Five Eyes, we're pretty screwed with anywhere Western, unfortunately. So,
I mean, the organizer for all protests in America is an anonymous narwhal from Antarctica.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah.
So they're a Nazi. That's what you're.
Yeah, pretty much.
Fucking Nazi narwhals. But I did want to. Someone was asking about an update on Commander X. I don't know too much direct information about what's going on. Last we talked, he was being held in solitary confinement. I don't know if that has changed. I assume it hasn't. Because
he's not in there anymore. What he's in now is basically like what he calls the dog cage or dog kennel, which is when he's in which is when they're sharing kind of like one big cell between 15 to 20 of them. And I mean, it like food is, y'all know, like jail food is pretty shit. Hygiene is not good for that because they have like one little bathroom for all of them that also has their trash in there as well. And then the kind of the only bright side to that is that there are people within the jail, taking care of him, all his bros in there. But yeah, he is out of solitary confinement and he's now in quote unquote protective custody, which is that situation in which he's packed in a dog cage. And, he's very vocal about those jail conditions, which is why we know so much about it. And, one of the things at least is, he's looking to talk more about the jail conditions itself. There's actually a lawsuit that was recently settled against Santa Rita Jail. I think for mental health provisions or something like that. It was based. Hold on, let me read this headline real quick. Alameda County Jail's mental health care would be overhauled under proposed lawsuit settlement. So basically there was a lawsuit put forth against the Santa Rita Jail. And what that settlement could do is it could kind of really shake some stuff up with the mental health amenities within the Santa Rita Jail. I don't know how that'll actually be carried out or if it'll actually happen because Santa Rita Jail is notoriously bad, and it's also one of this is kind of the only bright spot about it. It's very, very slow about delivering and administering vaccines to its inmates, which, fuck jails, but I'm kind of silently cheering for that because obviously I don't want the inmates in there to get an experimental jab that they definitely aren't receiving the information about. But yeah, that's kind of the updates on the jail itself. In terms of X personally, he's going to need some commissary soon just to buy some groceries because, like I said, jail food is shit. So he goes off of groceries and snacks, and he needs his personal items too. And I'll make sure to put the link with the Twitter thread that has those links in there in the chat. And
do we know any more about why he got taken out of Mexico? What circumstances surrounded the Mexican president giving him up? Like, do we know anything about that?
Basically, it's this really shaky thing where he was technically deported because he had a green card, but he didn't. I guess like something happened with the asylum process where he didn't have the full thing. But he thought he did because he couldn't understand the forms well. And the government was just like not clear about that at all. So basically, because his documentary was coming out and because he was really starting to get back into broadcasting and stuff, they chose that moment to bring him back into the U.S. And what he's facing now is 2 indictments from like a decade ago, one of them being from Santa Cruz, which is for his alleged defense of food not bombs in Santa Cruz, and one in the Middle District of Florida, which is Orlando, again for his alleged defense of food not bombs Orlando. And I can't reveal too much legal information, but what I can say is that the legal argument against him is very disorganized. It's kind of a joke. Discovery has been a joke. The district attorney for the Middle District in Orlando has straight up been too busy to really do much to advance that case coming from Orlando. And then the Santa Cruz discovery was a joke. So yeah, that's and you can kind of get that as well from the fact that like the whole argument against him is so disorganized. And then the other update as I have is regarding the indictment against him in Orlando. We have an ongoing petition to the mayor of Orlando and some members of city council, like the city attorney, to essentially recommend that the U.S. attorney drop charges against him in Orlando. And we're send that out to media, sign it, spread it around. And then this was something that was co-signed by Jay Rorty, his lawyer as well. So oh shit, that is too many characters to fit in the YouTube. God damn it. But yeah, I'm trying to, that's all I can think of for now.
No, you should maybe mention one more thing, and that's for listeners. And that is that his arrest actually happened like days literally after he just helped to provide Wi-Fi to Food Not Bombs location, right?
Yes, that's true. He got Wi-Fi to the Freedom Camp, which is a homeless encampment in Santa Cruz. That's where like Food Not Bombs, that's where Keith McHenry and them are. One of the things he said specifically when he made his comeback into his show was that he really wanted to do more to help out Santa Cruz and the homeless in Santa Cruz. So literally within a couple of weeks of him making, this comeback, he helped bring Wi-Fi to the Freedom Camp and was broadcasting with them from there.
That's badass. Like that's someone just having the ability to be like, yeah, let's fucking get internet and get that going. Like that's so fucking cool.
Yeah, and that's why he's probably considered a threat too, because he's also got something to say, right?
Mhm.
He's got a story to tell, and he
He's got
doesn't
a
shut up.
shit- He's got a shit ton. Yeah, I mean, listen, if y'all know Commander X, you know he has his signature 3-hour responses. So,
It's a nightmare interviewing him to try and get a word in edgeways, isn't it? Like, yeah. But I'd rather be interviewing him and having that situation right now than not. So,
yeah, I mean, it's honestly for me, it's like at least at this point, when he made his comeback and I got on the stream with him and he wouldn't shut up, I was like, ah, man, so good to have X back.
But I think we're good to wrap if that's cool with everybody.
Yeah.
Cool. Does everyone want to do outros and let everyone know where they can find you and your work?
Sure. Shall I start?
Cool.
Okay. So I have my own channel, Alex Hills, where I do anything that we protest in New Zealand, and also a bit of music from now and then. Hopefully getting a new channel started soon called Good Bad, which will be just purely music news. Me and my mate jamming, assuming lockdowns are finishing. And on Twitter, my main Twitter account is candles4 Assange, which is where I do threads of protest events for Julian and for Free Press, and I plan on getting one going for the 11 cities so far that are signed up for the 11th, which is a good amount. So I'll get that going as soon as I can find all those links and graphics and stuff. And my private Twitter is Greenweaver Arch, which is horribly long, but I'm keeping it for now. So I think that's me. On Facebook, I am still there, although I have been banned in January with World Socialist Website, which is actually a little bit of poetic justice because World Socialist Website and Socialist Equality Group were cheering for Trump to be silenced, and then about 2-3 weeks later, they were also removed, which is, I was removed on the same day. But so I haven't got Alex Hills anymore. I have got Alex Greenweaver on Facebook, and that is me, I think.
Where can people find you and your work, Emma?
You can find me mostly on Twitter these days, at By My Elf. It's like By Myself, but elf. So,
I follow you.
Cool. And I guess if you want to see any of the photos that were mentioned earlier, you can check out my photojournalism website. That's the URL is my name, so it's emmasron.com. So EMMASRON.com. And I'm actually not doing a ton of things at this exact moment, so those are the best places to find me.
And I know everybody knows where to find you, Glory, but if you could just give it a shout out.
Okay. I am on the ground and around. If you search up Glory Jones on Twitter, I should come up with the hashtag Free Assange next to it, because how many other Glory Joneses do you know? But, I show up on Slow News Day, I show up on Anonymous Bites Back, and I show up on here sometimes too. And yeah, and I have a Hive too. It's at Zero Eclipse with 2 E's at the end. Y'all should check that shit out. For any updates in the Commander X, freecommanderx.org, and also at freecommanderx_ on Twitter. That underscore is very important because at Free Commander X is already taken by who other than Commander X himself. So at Free Commander X_ on Twitter is where you can find all the updates on that case. October 12th, 9 a.m. is when his next hearing is. So we'll be protesting in San Jose outside the Robert Peckham Federal Building. And we'll be there. The trial will be taking place at the same time, but more updates for that will be on at FreeCommanderX_ on Twitter. And I think that's everything.
Cool. Well, thank all of you guys for joining us. I really appreciate it. Anytime you want to jump in, Glory, it's always the same link. So if you're bored and we're on, feel free to hop in. But what about you, Mark? Where can people find the articles that you've been putting out and the other work that you do?
Just go to marklovers.com. It's Mark with a K, or find me on Twitter, Censored Lovers. Yeah, and you can find us on ABB, of course, youtube.com/Anonymous Worldwide or youtube.com/Anonymous Bites Back is backup channel. But the best thing is just go to marklovers.com because I have all these links to these different social media websites, and usually I get censored a lot on different social media. So you find like the updated link on there.
My name's Andrew Smith. You can find me on Twitter at Andrew Zigman. You can find all of this fun on at action_for_Assange. We do have a Rockfin. If you're watching on YouTube or any of the YouTube platforms, please consider making it. Don't donate to us. Donate to a bunch of the other content creators and subscribe to them. But yeah, if you could, please hop over there. Eventually, we're not going to be able to be here anymore like a bunch of other content creators have been saying and stuff. So cool. If you can, share the links in the description for the End the Damn Wars events. It's endthedamnwars.org. But also on Twitter, it's just at endthedamnwars. So super looking forward to the September events. And yeah, just thank you everybody. And we will see you next time.